Good evening.
Same judge.
Before we get going, just one thing to be aware of is that you no longer need to press the microphones. As long as the green light is on, the microphone is on. So just be aware of that in case you are having any side conversations, because those will get picked up by FairTV. And we might not want that. Okay. Good evening. I'm calling the Fairfield RTM October 20th, 2025 Joint Committee presentation to order at 7:32 p.m. And I will now take the roll. Ken Astorita, Peter Britton, Melissa Longo,
Here.
Brooke Sparacino, Tara Cook-Littman, Megan McCloat, Dave Rock, Chris Shea, Bob Alwinger, Mike Hardigan, Jeff Steele, Cindy Waldron, Jennifer Hauhuth, Laura Carson, Michelle McCabe, Liz Zazima,
Here.
Josh Garskoff, Kristen O'Neill, Sharon Pistilli, Jay Walk, Rob Blanchard,
Here.
Nancy Dunny, Eric Druniak,
Here.
Alex Ocampo, Steve Barretts, Lori Galdenzi,
Here.
John Kuhn,
Here.
Scott Nickel, Lenny Brayman,
Here.
Chris Carroll, Colin Colburn, Christine Ludwigczak, Drew Georgiadis, Lisa Havey, Mark McDermott,
Here.
Karen Wackerman, Matt Ambrose, Justin Contrado, I'm here, Pierre Ratsky.
Here.
All right, let's all stand for the pledge. Oh, thank you. Flag to the United States. Chris, okay. So first up on our presentation is Fire Chief Dunn regarding the Homeland Security Grant Program, which is agenda item number 3. The backup for this item begins on page 1.
Good evening. So whenever there's a change in the first selectman, it's necessary to authorize the new first selectman to be able to sign any documents that are necessary to get FEMA funds through the state of Connecticut DEMIS, which is Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. So it's just a something that if you anytime there's new change, we usually come before you and ask you to authorize her. Any questions?
Any questions? All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Philomena Appia, Program Director at Fairfield Cares. I believe she's online to present on agenda item 4, which is a Connecticut DEMIS grant, and backup for this item begins on page 5.
Good evening. I'm Philomena. Appia, the program coordinator for Fairfield Cares. I'm requesting for the town to hold on to our LPC grant so that it can be used to support our upcoming programming and events for alcohol and vaping. And on an initiative, the funds are very important for us to do programming to engage with the community, as well as the youth, and to support our goal to reduce substance use among Fairfield University community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Representative Carson.
Hi, Representative Carson, District 4. I'm just curious if you have any way of gauging if these initiatives with, getting the word out about vaping, and I read in the backup what you do. Is there a way to gauge if it has any impact on really reducing the usage of vaping or drinking, underage drinking?
Yes, so every year we implement a student survey throughout the Fairfield Public Schools, and that's how we see if our programming and initiatives work. The survey accounts for alcohol, vaping, marijuana, even mental health. So through the questions that we use in our survey and are implement to their public schools, we're able to see if our programs work and how else we can, if they don't work, where to go from there and how to update it or fix it for the future. So yes, the 2025, recently just implemented the 2025 survey, and we'll be presenting that to the town to see what other program we can do from that. But the surveys are how we track to see if our initiatives work.
Did you see in 24 that it had gone down? What was the
Yes.
results of that?
I wasn't here in 2024. The recent one. I recently got hired 7 months ago. But yes, and in the 2025 one, vaping has reduced among youth. A lot of the youth feel as though it's very harmful, so they aren't partaking in it. Alcohol is really the concern now, but that's what we're gonna make programming to address that in the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on, we have Anthony Santiago from the Engineering Department to present on agenda item number 5, which is the Reef Road Pedestrian Improvement Project. The backup for this begins on page 15.
Thank you. Late last year into early this year, we completed phase 1 of the Reef Road Round Hill Road Sidewalks project, which took place on Round Hill Road from Barlow Road and down to the Park and Ride, and on Reef Road from Nichols Avenue to Howard Street. This grant that the state has given us is for phase 2 of that project, which will continue on Reef Road down to Fairfield Beach Road. We'll use the same contractor as the previous phase, G. Pick and Sons, who will honor their bid prices from last year. And upon approval.
Mr. Santiago, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you speak a little louder into the microphone?
Sure. Trying to think where to keep up. Okay. Basically, this is phase 2 of the project, going from Reef Road down to on Reef Road from Howard Street down to Fairfield Beach Road. We'll use the same contractor as last year, G. Pick and Sons, who will agree to last year's bid prices. And upon approval, we'll be able to accept the funding from the state and continue with the project.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Shea.
Thank you very much for your report. Chris Shea from District 2. You say that this is a second phase of a project and that you're gonna use the same contractor that was awarded the first phase of the project. And so you're not bidding this out, you're just gonna use his numbers from the previous work and not request bids from other contractors for this phase?
That's correct. As this is an extension of the project, we had double checked with the purchasing department, and we believe we're able to do that for phase 2.
I'm just interested to know why you don't think it's a good idea to request competitive bids on, what's the dollar value of this project?
So for the ad alternate for the project, which is the Reef Road portion, is about $880,000.
So you're not going to get competitive bids on an $880,000 project?
We had decided not to. One of the reasons being that prices for construction materials keep going up, and so we had thought that having a contractor honor prices from last year would ensure that the prices would be reliable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carroll.
Yes.
Representative Carroll,
Thank you.
please make sure, you don't have to hold it. You just, as long as the green light is on. Oh, okay. We couldn't hear you. Sorry. I get it. I get it. Thank you. Representative McCloat.
Hi, thanks for being here. Megan McLeod, District 2. As I understand it, this was put out to competitive bid, the entire project last year, correct?
Yes,
And the Phase 2 was included for every bidder last year.
yes,
How many bidders were there last year?
4.
Did you reach back out to the other 3 to offer them the option to hold their bidding price from last year, or only this one?
Only this one, I believe. I'd have to look into that.
So the other bidders who already bid on this project were not offered the same opportunity?
Not sure. I'll have to double check on that.
Okay, if you could get back to us with that, that'd be helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Online? All right, thank you. If you could just make sure to follow back up with us before next week. Thank you. Okay, next we have our registrars of voters to present on an early voting grant, which is agenda item number 6. The backup begins on page 105. I see one of our registrars online, Ms. Politi.
Hi, Kathy Politi here. How is everybody? First day of early voting today. I just wanted to mention it was successful. We had 175 voters today. We have an early voting grant that we're pretty lucky to be receiving of $29,455.02. We just have to meet certain criteria. The funds must be fully expended by December 31st of this year, and they must be utilized for costs directly tied to early voting. Let me know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Representative McClout.
Hi, Kathy, Megan McLeod, District 2. So just as I understand, this grant has to be expended for the early voting that started today. Is that what you're saying?
Everything that it goes towards must be utilized by the end of the year. So I was thinking staffing, because staffing costs are going to be 27,540. So, that makes the most sense to me. And maybe toss the extra money into printing, like the cost of ballots or something.
Are any additional printing expenses going to be incurred from this date forward on October 20th that early voting has already started? Or have we already expended all of the funds that we would need for any advertising for early voting by this point?
We have already expended everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, I believe we have Deputy Chief Waya here online to present on agenda item number 7, the Port Security Grant, and backup begins on page 111.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry that I couldn't be there in person tonight. So we were just recently awarded another port security grant. We get one just about every year, and the purpose of the grant is to sustain our marine unit assets. So the total approved project is $104,053, and of this amount, FEMA provides $78,040 in federal funding, and the town of Fairfield is responsible for contributing $26,013 in matching non-federal funds, and that would be covered from our maintenance and repair of automotive budget, and that's where we would normally charge expenses for maintenance of our vessels. The grant period runs from October 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2028, so this is a 3-year grant, allowing us to spread the funds strategically over 3 years. And the primary use is to upgrade the 10-year-old electronics on our Safe Boat 23 and to sustain the structural integrity of the vessel. And in addition, it allows us flexibility to address unanticipated needs for maintenance and repair of our vessels. So the grant, it ensures the critical public safety infrastructure is maintained without placing the full cost on the taxpayer. And by spreading it over 3 years, we maximize the impact of the funding, we extend the service life of our assets, and we preserve the operational readiness of the Marine unit. And we respectfully request approval to receive on the awarded funds.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? All right. Thank you, Chief Waya.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on. Nice. To agenda item number 8. We have Angeles Papa George and Jeff Peterson from the Board of Ed here. I think Superintendent Testani was slated to be here as well. I don't know if, I guess you guys are just presenting in a meeting? Okay, thank you. And this is to first present on the bonding resolution for Dwight Elementary and the ECC project. And the backup for this begins on page 120. Oh, sorry, Representative Steele.
Oh, there it
Green
goes.
light is on.
I just have a question before we begin this, because this is obviously a big item, $75 million. When were we going to get the feasibility study, or how is that going to be delivered to us? Well, when are we going to get that feasibility study? It was in hard copy, I know, nice glossy hard copy to Board of Finance.
I'm
We
not
didn't
sure,
get any.
I'm not sure who printed it for the Board of Finance.
Okay.
The Board of Ed printed ones for our membership. The report is online. This is
Can you
accessible.
just, where is it online? Because it wasn't under any of our backup material, as I saw.
I have no control over your backup material.
Yeah.
I believe that if you go to the town website, unless I'm mistaken, there is a Dwight Building Committee that you guys voted on. I believe
Yep.
it's linked in there. I'm sure it's in
Well,
other parts on the town website as well.
It is not on the website under the RTM backup material anywhere. And if it is, please tell me. I ended up digging deeper and found it actually I had somebody send it to me. I couldn't find it in the Board of Finance, although it probably was there. The bigger question is, if anyone wants to see this feasibility study that we paid $1 million, we as a town, to get, why didn't we get this? I mean, we're now discussing it. We're going to hear, thankfully, and we'll ask our questions. But not only we did not have a hard copy book, but I'm sure did everybody know where to find this?
So it's a
It
great
wasn't
question.
in the backup material, and now we're supposed to be, up to speed on it and having digested it all to ask questions, and I don't understand.
It's a great question. Hopefully in your presentation, you can cover how the feasibility study led us to this point to be presenting on this.
It was a 150-page document that was not sent to the RTM to prepare for the biggest vote we've had in 2 years, the biggest dollar value, everything, and we don't have it. Now, some
Duly
of us
noted.
could have been ambitious to look for it and find it and ask for it, but it was not in our backup material, and I think that's completely ridiculous.
Can you submit through me a formal request to make sure that it's included in our backup for next week?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I'm actually going to try and hold questions until we give our presenters a chance to present. Okay. Go ahead.
Megan McLeod, District 2. I'm concerned, and perhaps the town attorney can weigh in, that without disclosing that information that's referenced, I just counted 6 times in your proposal, I feel that we are very much at risk of discussing, asking questions on a presentation, and perhaps even moving to vote it to the general meeting without proper disclosure. So I'm a little concerned about that before we move forward. The public has a chance to ask questions as a result of our charter. The way we're set up is to have a committee meeting and a general meeting for the entire purpose of public transparency so that they can ask questions based on how this meeting goes. I have a really hard time having a discussion about something that represents 20% of our entire municipal budget, and the RTM members haven't even been given.
I
the
hear your
information.
concerns. I'm going to ask our presenters to give their presentation. We have an opportunity to ask questions, and we certainly have the opportunity to continue to ask questions during the week until our voting meeting next week. And I think that this is a valid question that we can have answered through this process. And then certainly public has the opportunity next week as well to come and ask questions. So
With all due respect, Madam Moderator, we will have missed our opportunity to ask the questions today without access to that. And so
I-
on the record, I just have to state, I think everybody on this panel should be a little concerned about that. They all have big, beautiful books. I wish I had the opportunity to get it to this day.
Okay.
As of an hour ago, couldn't get it online. It's not in our backup. I think that's a major public
Okay.
disclosure issue.
your concern is noted. Thank you. I'm going to ask our presenters to go ahead.
Thank you very much. So Jeff Peterson, Board of Ed Chair. To give a little background, I think would be warranted here. The Board of Ed came before, had voted in 2024 to forward a Dwight new building project. At that time, it was decided at the Board of Selectmen level to spend the $1 million that became kind of the working group project to do the feasibility study that people are referencing here. That working group met for several months through the first half and into the summer of this year. And at the end of August came out with a report that had multiple scenarios. Relative to the Dwight situation, there were 6 different scenarios to consider. Having that information and getting Board of Ed had a presentation, Board of Ed and the first selectman was at a presentation by the Svigals consultant that produced the report in early September. Earlier this month, the Board of Finance also had a 3 or 4 hour meeting at which they got a presentation by the consultants as well. The Board of Ed's request is for Concept 1F, which is an all-new Dwight plus an ECC addition to that building. So early childhood center plus a new Dwight. For several reasons, and I'm happy to go into those maybe as we get further into the process, and that's the request that you have before you. The $76 million represents the most recent, most comprehensive number by the consultant for the cost of scenario 1F, which is again the new build plus the early childhood center addition. And that is what's been voted on by the Board of Ed, that's been voted on by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and now it comes to your board for final approval.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, Representative Estorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astor, District 1. That's the presentation?
So I'll apologize. Before you have your 14 points that we normally do for the boards. My understand, and I apologize, my understanding is that you had all seen the report and I was prepared to answer questions on the 14 points and how we worked with them. I wasn't prepared to give a presentation on a report that I did not file or submit.
Madam Moderator, I have to agree with with Representative McClellan. This is absurd. This is absurd. We're expected to vote and ask questions on a project that I'm gonna go out on a limb and probably say this is the biggest expenditure this town will have occurred to this date, and we don't have the information, and the presentation is like we need to spend $76 million. I mean, this is absurd.
I do think it would be helpful to give a little more context to the body.
I assure you, I can talk about this project at great length. I did not know that you didn't have the presentation from Svigals in front of you. And just to make a distinction between a couple of things. The working group went through the process with Svigals and partners to come up with the feasibility study. Other boards looking at that information have made a specific funding request based on our evaluation of that report. So I want to distinguish between those.
That I understand, but this body is not a rubber stamp. Just because the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance approved it does not mean that this body is obligated to approve it. We have 40 people here who are going to have their own sets of questions and own concerns about an expenditure of this magnitude. And there's been no opportunity to review these materials, even receive these materials, let alone digest them. So, I mean, if you could start going through like maybe the different options here and why one was better than the other, maybe that would be a great place to start the presentation.
Yeah. Could you please highlight, for example, why just give a little more color to this? I do think that this is a significant expenditure, and I do think that we need to have a little more understanding.
Sure, understood. I'll freestyle it and stop me if anyone has any questions, but and especially Angela, stop me if I'm going too far astray.
Madam Moderator, just one other thing, and I understand if you're not prepared to do this, then we should postpone this and do it till next month.
So
I
I
think we're
see First
perfectly ready.
Selectman Vitale coming up to the podium. I'd like to give her an opportunity to add to the presentation.
Just as a matter of procedure, the Board of Ed voted on this. They're putting forward this project. The agenda item is not a presentation of the Svigals report, which is school feasibility study. I appreciate you want that background, but I would just ask, Mr. Peterson served on that committee and Mr. Papageorge from the beginning. The Board of Ed reviewed it. This document was public. as a separate presentation, not as part of the Dwight approval, but just as a separate presentation of Svagals. I don't know if this body requested through the moderator that that presentation be given to this body, but in terms of this funding request, this is based on action that the Board of Ed took. When we approved this, we had just the same presentation that you're receiving right now for
I
this
doubt
particular
anybody asked
funding.
because I don't think anybody knew.
Well, I would just ask if you have questions that you pose them to Mr. Peterson and Mr. Papageorge based on the Board of Education's discussions and why they put this project forward before all town bodies.
Then my question would be, can you go through the different options that are laid out in the consultant's report and why one was better than another?
I can tell you what our board's, my board's rationale was in going through the project.
Please, that would be helpful.
And so again, there were 6 options that were considered under the Svigals report. One was a like-new renovation, no addition to the building, using the existing building footprint, and seeing what we could do with that. My board felt like that was not an appropriate approach, because we also passed educational specifications for a Dwight building that had educational spaces that were not able to be fit in the current footprint. The current footprint was too small for the educational specifications that we wanted to go forward with. There were also several options where we did a like-new renovation on the main building, but added additional space to accommodate those further programming areas. And there were several variants of that. A variant with the ECC, a variant not with the ECC, but also all attached to the current footprint of the building, the existing building. There were some issues with that. There were some, many of my members were worried about the number of unknowns that came along with that.
I'm sorry, we're actually working on getting that feasibility. I know it's not a perfect solution. Okay, then I'm going to wait until he finishes his presentation to take questions.
Just within the presentation, as he talks about these options, instead of us going back and making him go over this again, could you tell us roughly what each of these options costs?
Yeah, I know this is not a perfect solution. We are working on pulling up the feasibility study right now and getting it out to everyone. It would have been certainly helpful to have this. And then I think it can inform some of our questions. So we are working on that in real time.
Just, Madam Moderator, is that going to be sufficient for this body?
I recognize that hold on.
There's 40 members here. I can't imagine all of the people here don't have one question at least. And this is disrespect to this body that it is viewed as quote unquote a rubber stamp. We're just going to come in here and just going to vote it because the Board of Finance voted on it.
Hold on
because
one
the Board
second.
of Education.
I recognize
that's
this
like the
is
budget. Everything
Representative
comes
Steele.
through us
Hold on.
too.
Yes. I recognize that it would be ideal. We should have had this ahead of time. I see your hand. I know there's other people waiting as well. Certainly, we are going to go ahead with the presentation tonight. However, hold on. We're going to go ahead with the presentation tonight to the extent that we can. Certainly, every member will have to decide how they want to proceed from this, following up with questions during the week, and then at our voting meeting next week. It remains on our agenda at this point in time. I'm going to actually have them continue what they were saying, and Representative McClough, I've got a couple people in front of you. Okay?
That I'd like to raise. As a point of order, Megan McClough, District 2, on the record, are we saying we're moving forward as this body and showing a presentation that was not included in the backup, which is required by public disclosure to be noticed? We're going to move forward and discuss something that's going to go up on the screen that was not included in the backup? Is that the decision of this body? I'd like to get that on the record.
This is simply a presentation. Right now, we can present on any of these things right now, and then we'll have our voting meeting next week. Right now, we are working, as I said, on getting you the feasibility study. The item is continuing to be on the agenda.
But the feasibility study is not included in the public backup.
I
and
understand
we're going to show that as part of this meeting
The
that has not been
feasibility
noticed.
study would be helpful in terms of informing the agenda that is, the item that is on our agenda. The item on our agenda, which the information was included, is the bonding resolution. Again, I recognize
I'm not contesting that it would be helpful. I think
Yes.
everybody agrees here, it sure as hell would be helpful.
Agreed.
I'm saying, is it legal for us to move forward and discuss something that's going to be put up in a public meeting that has not been included in the backup and disclosed pursuant to public notification requirements by statute?
I believe that because it will be included in the backup by the time public can make comment on it by next week.
But it was not included in the backup by the time we could make a comment, so can we pause and ask for an
I-
opinion on behalf of the town attorney before we let these gentlemen continue at the risk of exposing this body to liability? Is that something we can ask?
Representative McKay, do you have a point of order?
I just want to ask a couple questions about what.
Correct.
This feasibility study online, and anybody who, it's
And
right on the
Representative McKay, people online can't hear.
Okay. The feasibility study is available on the website. It's under
gotta-
departments, operation and capital projects, Dwight
If it's
feasibility
before
study.
this body, it's got to be on the RTM.
And that's
backup.
my, I'm just making a point that it is available to the public. That's
the
po-
patch. I know it was sent
That's
to
the
the patch.
point
Okay.
that I'm making. And if you don't mind, Representative McLeod, I believe I have the floor and you will have an opportunity to speak when it's your turn.
I will,
Thank
yes.
you. Okay, the second question that I have is, I'm under the impression that the feasibility study is informing choices made as to what the project is going to be, which is not within the purview of the RTM. If I'm not mistaken, and I may be because I'm a fairly new member, I just want to clarify that the only thing that we're voting on is not which plan to pick, but to see if we agree with two prior boards as to whether to bond this project. So if you don't like the project, you don't have to vote to bond it, but it is not within our purview, if I am not mistaken, to pick between projects. That is not our role. Am I wrong in that?
Correct. I am going to allow the presentation to continue. I will note for the record that I do believe the feasibility study should have been included to or sent to us ahead of time, not because it is on our agenda as a voting item, but because it would have helped to inform the discussion. There will be an opportunity. I would like for that to be sent to us so it can be disseminated to the body this week. I am going to, as I said, allow the presentation to continue for people to ask questions with the information available. Next week at our voting meeting, and certainly there's an opportunity for public comment. And if people do not feel like they have been able to have an opportunity this week to have those questions answered, certainly they can vote however they determine at that point. Go ahead, Mr. Peterson.
All right, picking up, I'll run through again these 6 scenarios, and then I do have cost estimates for them, and which is where the number in the 14 points that is in your backup tonight was derived from this Svigals report. But just to get a sense of what the discussion was among the other 3 bodies that voted in favor of this project. So again, we had a like new renovation that my board was uncomfortable with because it was not large enough to accommodate all the educational spaces that belong in that building. And then several like new renovations that were adding additional educational space, adding additional square footage for other programs, including in some scenarios, the ECC classrooms, the 5 ECC classrooms that we are intending to put up there, and some not putting those up there. All of the renovation options, several of our members were concerned when it came to evaluating them. There were a lot of unknowns with those scenarios. Unknown, especially related to moisture in the foundation, related to hazardous materials in the project. Those renovations would also have either necessitated moving kids out of the building or trying to work a phased system where we perhaps extend the project at a higher cost, keeping kids in the building. Those were not palatable options to my board. And so we passed over those ultimately after a pretty in-depth discussion. And then there were two new building scenarios. Scenario 1E was simply a new Dwight building without any ECC pre-K programming space, and one was with that. Ultimately, what my board opted to go forward with, and which has been approved by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, is the a completely new building with pre-K classrooms in it. Some of the advantages that were seen by my board members in this, we could build it directly alongside the current building. There would be no need to move kids out, have that kind of disruption, and then demolish the new building once demolish the old building once the new building was occupied. That was a big thing. Also, with the renovation, we didn't have a good sense of how long the renovations would hold for. If we're thinking about a 20-year renovation, then we're still paying a lot of money, millions of dollars to renovate a building that may not be feasible to renovate again in 20 years. This building was built in 1962 initially. It has served us very well for decades. And the thought was, spend the money more wisely, get more value by building a new building that will have, say, a 50-year lifespan. And to go through some of the costs of these scenarios, also we need to talk about the state reimbursement for these, because it matters actually materially to the decision. There are several things that we were able to take advantage of in planning for the new Dwight plus the 5 ECC classrooms up there. Specifically, there is state law saying that if you add pre-K classrooms in a project, you get an additional 15% reimbursement on the entirety of the project, not just the square footage devoted to the pre-K classrooms, and that was a big difference maker. Also, we are intending to put what we call CLC classrooms, which is in K-5 special ed, in that building to alleviate space crowding issues at other buildings, particularly Mill Hill. The additional space for those classrooms will get us an additional 15% renovation or reimbursement from the state, but only on the square footage dedicated to that programming. So overall, I'll run through these just to give you the numbers, and you can see them when you get access to the presentation itself. The like new renovation, just the renovation, current footprint, nothing beyond that. After reimbursement, the Svigal is listed as a minimum estimated municipal cost of $24,222,197. So concept 1B, a like new renovation in addition for just Dwight, not any ECC programming, minimum estimated municipal cost, $41,620,404. Concept 1C, which was a like new renovation plus an addition for just the ECC, $31,910,117, that minimum estimated cost after reimbursement. So concept 1D, a like new renovation plus an addition for extra Dwight space and the ECC project or ECC classrooms, $44,982,027. Concept 1E is building an all new Dwight with no ECC, no pre-K space. That came in at a minimum estimated municipal cost of $57,995,003. And concept 1F, which is again in the back of the request before you, the raw construction cost and the number that is in your backup is $76,398,168. The minimum estimated municipal cost after all those reimbursements that I was talking about, $60,707,552.
I also wanted to add that we do have an opinion back from the town attorney, and sorry, I need my glasses, that the feasibility study can be added to the backup before the vote, and that we would not be in violation of anything. So to answer your question, Representative McClote, in violation of FOIA. Right. So before I take any questions, any additional things that you wanted to include?
That's the broad strokes. We're very happy to get into
Okay.
the nitty gritty with member questions.
Thank you. I want to go back to my list that I had before, just in case there was still lingering questions. I had Representative Carroll and then Representative Colburn, and I just want to go back to them and then continue on from there. So Representative Carroll, you're
I
up.
will pass for now.
Okay, Representative Colburn. Please.
Alan Colburn, District 8. I did, like probably others on this body, I did watch the Board of Finance before this, so I saw some of this information, but it definitely, I just want to say it would have been helpful to have this in front of us, and that was my assumption that we were going to have a similar presentation. So that is a little disappointing. But my question, I have a series of questions. I'll try to be brief. Is the current Dwight Elementary School safe?
Yes.
And how do we know that?
So due to some concerns similar to yours, we had an evaluation done by the Yale Medical Group, who comes in and does safe building evaluations for health. They call it healthy building evaluations. And they did a presentation, they did a full evaluation of the building, and they did a presentation to the staff and families up at the building. And they did declare that it was a safe working building at this point.
Okay. I'm curious, you know, I grew up in this town. I remember the McKinley situation many years ago. It sort of baffles me that we are not at the same point that we were with McKinley, but sure feels like it. How did we get to this point, and what other issues do we have coming down the pike that could be of similar magnitude?
Issues as far as.
I mean, we have a school that many residents, and that's the reason why I started with safety, number one, because in my mind, that is the most important question in this, because we still have students and we still have teachers in a school where many residents have said that it stinks and they have major concerns. And I keep on hearing through the meetings that I've listened to concerns about things like water and moisture, and that never leads to good things. How do we let this happen again?
So, as I said, we've had this discussion many times. We've had different groups come in and look at it. The latest was part of this evaluation. Yale did come in and do a full evaluation of the building. They met with staff, they met with parents, they spoke with anyone who felt like they were having health issues because of the building. They did evaluations on that. That report is available on the town website as well. They actually at the end of the parent meeting said that Dwight was one of the oldest and best shaped buildings that they've been in, given the age of it and the concerns that have been risen about it. Doing their evaluation, they felt that it was a safe building for people to continue occupying at this time.
I do want to take a little left turn and call out our custodial staff. I believe that this operations staff in this town has done a fantastic job with this building, but the building is 63 years old. It's our oldest, unrenovated school at this point. And moisture was a big issue in the discussions with the working group, and came up in a lot of the debate that we had at the Board of Ed, balancing a renovation versus a new build. And there were thoughts, and they are detailed in the report, that that the foundation may be more prone to further water damage, the current building, and that some probing would need to be done to see the degree to which the current foundation would be able to be waterproofed. And that would be an expense and again, a variable, an unknown that we would not have with new construction. So, and I never want to slam our forebears, because I grew up in this town too. The baby boom generation went to great schools that they built very quickly and have stood the test of time. But my board believes that it's time to begin moving on from those schools, especially in cases like Dwight, where the site presents certain challenges. Moisture is a primary one, and try to build for the future.
And I don't want to rehash the past, but I do need to voice that frustration that I know so many feel, that it is it's like it just keeps on happening over and over again with our school properties.
I'll also add, again, to give Angelus here some credit. It was about 4 years ago, I think, that Angelus came before our board and said, at the time, Jennings was ahead of it for a renovation schedule. And Angelus came and said, we really think that Dwight is in a position that it needs more sooner. And we flip-flopped them on the schedule, and that was not an easy decision to make, because Jennings had for several years expected themselves to be the next in line. But my board was very concerned with what they heard from our operations team, and that's why we've been focused on moving this project forward at this time.
Okay. I need to get an understanding on the accuracy of the numbers and how much you guys trust the $76 million that is in front of us, that it is not going to increase substantially and you're going to be back here in a couple, I don't know, months or years asking us for X amount more.
So Svigal's we believe Svigal's did a deep dive at the numbers evaluations. They hired some consultants underneath them that do this for a living. They look at the projects, they look at the conceptual designs, and they base numbers on that. We actually, on the Board of Ed side, we took their numbers and worked with some of our contractors that have done similar projects with us in the past. And they were coming back without the numbers from Segal's, but with the similar scope, and they were coming back with very close numbers. So we're very comfortable with the numbers moving forwards with Segal's.
Okay. I'll ask one more question, then I'll yield back. How have we engaged the public in both the decision-making process and with the decision that's been made by the Board of Education and others on a new build? How have we engaged the public?
Should point out that, again, this was originally voted out of our Board of Ed, in the fall of 2024. And this has been before us and before the parent community for quite some time. There have been meetings up at Dwight itself. I know that First Selectman Gerber and Superintendent Testani held meetings up there during the working group process to talk about the status of the project. It has come up in our board meetings for many, many months. It's been a constant topic of conversation. So we've had our discussions in public for really a year and a half related to this.
But no official public hearing or public meeting.
All of our meetings are public.
Well, I understand that,
Yeah.
but one that is a true public hearing.
Well, I mean, it's come up in our town hall meetings, which are open to the public to ask questions of us. It's come up, it's been on our agenda time and again. Working group, the working group process was talked about up at Dwight with Dwight parents. So I mean, I feel like it's been out there for quite some time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carroll, I believe you did in fact have a question.
Yes, Chris Carroll, District 8. Mr. Papa George, maybe you can explain this to me. What are you doing? Oh, I recall when you say 2024, there was a vote on this. I believe there was a budget request then of $62 million in that neighborhood. And I looked when I got in tonight. I can't find that, but do you recall, was there any number out there? There was, I just can't remember.
There was a conceptual number performed by a different team at the time.
Do you know what that number was?
I don't have that off the top of my
Okay,
head.
I believe it was between 62 and 64 million.
I believe you were right. in
So
that.
if you don't know that one, you probably couldn't answer the question, where did this 10 million come from? Is that just the ECC edition?
It's not just the ECC edition, it is the evaluation. That original scope that we were working with was a preliminary number, and we were at that time asking for the seed money to get deeper into that. Since that time, before this Figals team and the working group started, the Board of Education did vote and approve an ed spec, which was not present at the original onset when they came up with the first set of numbers, not Svigal's, but the other group. The new ed specs do meet the state requirements for standard sizing for different classrooms and spaces. So this was stuff that was not available at that original time.
Okay. Is the number there, GSF, is that gross square footage or cost per square foot? And that 572.93, the direct costs, how does that compare to other schools that have been built in the state of Connecticut in the last couple of years?
So that's how I mentioned before. This was the Dwight, this was the Svigal's report. We did work with other contractors who are doing similar type of buildings all over the state of Connecticut, and they did put us right in line with where they were projecting.
So 572 and then goes up way up to 944. You're gonna tell me if I look at other schools built in the state of Connecticut, similar size,
Similar size.
considerations, it's going to be the same type of a number.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, and this follows a little bit of what Colin was saying. We're at 76.4. How do you ensure us that that's the number you're going to stay at? Myself, I'm sure other people have done this, and I brought this up at this meeting these meetings over the last few years. Is I come out of a business world that if somebody said you got $76 million to get the job done, I don't come back a year later and say I need another 10 million.
So
You got 76 million, make the adjustments and come in at 76 million. How do you ensure us that you can do that?
So that is where the Dwight Building Committee comes in, and they will work through the process of design development documents. And at that point is when they will come back, and if there's numbers that are askew from what they're saying, they will value engineer and look at where things can be adjusted, what can be moved. So we're giving them a hard deadline of the 76.4, and they will work within their budget is what they will have to do.
Okay, but they don't sign the checks or they don't come to us for the authorizations, you do.
We do not. This is once you vote on this project, you will not see me before you again for this project. You will see the Dwight Building Committee Chair and their team before you. My job is to get them the checkbook, and then they work with the checkbook.
Thank you.
I do want to know, and Angels, correct me if I'm wrong, both the most recent renovation projects that we've done at Mill Hill and at Holland Hill have come in slightly under budget.
Both have returned.
Return funds to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Representative Shea.
Hi, thank you both very much for being here before us. Chris Shea, District 2. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody knows that there is nobody in town that is more in favor of having safe, environmentally sound, beautiful classrooms for our children to learn in. I think that's a really, really important thing. It all starts with that. Then I want to say that I'm very disappointed that as a representative of District 2 citizens who I think some of their kids would go to Dwight, I wasn't afforded the opportunity to get the information that I believe is really important to make an informed decision on this enormous spend. $76 million is probably the largest capital project that Fairfield's ever had. And you guys are coming before us tonight unprepared. You have no presentation. You weren't planning on making a presentation. There's no one here from the engineering department. There's no one here from the consulting firm. And we don't have any of these documents. And I find it really difficult to follow numbers when they're just being recited without them being written down in front of me. It's just something that I have a hard time with. And they're all very big numbers. So it's a concern of mine. I did have an opportunity over the weekend to look at the report. I was able to borrow it from a Board of Finance member who lent it to me with a promise that I would give it back to them. And I also did have an opportunity to review the recording of the Board of Finance meeting. I think that the RTM members should have been given the same courtesy and had a hard copy of that report given to us before tonight's meeting, or at a minimum at tonight's meeting. I mean, ideally, we would have that report tonight and then have a month to review it and come up with questions. And also, I would believe that would have been really great if maybe the town citizens would have had an opportunity to maybe have a a town hall meeting about this proposal. It's a huge undertaking. And I would bet that many of them are feeling unrepresented right now. You're asking us as their representatives to approve this project, and we don't know what we're approving. It really isn't fair. I mean, I think it would have been great if we had maybe had an opportunity to go tour the different facilities and talk about the options. And, this study came up with how many different options?
6 for the Dwight site.
Right, and then there was giant steps, and there were a couple of other ancillary options thrown in the mix, and you're coming before us with only one choice. We haven't had an opportunity to even hear about what the various choices are, and I'm wondering.
So I'm sorry, Representative Shea, I do want to emphasize that the standard procedure for this is that we as the RTM wouldn't actually be making the decision. It would be that would have been done in the prior process that was followed with coming to us with the decision. I don't disagree, by the way, that I would have liked to have seen the feasibility study included in our backup, but I do want to emphasize that it is and has in fact been, publicly available. Again, I'm not disagreeing with the concerns about this, and that there have been public meetings throughout the process. But the standard process for this is we would not have had, as the RTM, we would not be choosing the plan.
So who chose the plan?
The Board of Ed evaluated various options before us and chose the one that we felt was most consistent with the educational needs of the students in that area.
Okay.
Based on our understanding of what programming is going to go there, based on our understanding of the deficiencies in the current facility, based on our discussions about potential disruptions and unknowns in other scenarios, this was the one that the majority of our board members favored and decided to push forward to other town bodies. It was the 1F, new Dwight building plus an ECC addition.
And it is not the one that I favor. I guess not that it matters. So did Svigal and partners have an opinion on which proposal they recommended? Did they recommend anything to the Board of Ed?
I will say in their presentations, they did not make a specific recommendation. However, one theme that was pretty consistent through their presentation, both to us and to the Board of Finance, was that there were more unknowns or more variables with a renovation than with a new build. And the new build would likely have a longer lifespan than a renovation. And those were arguments that I think my board members took to heart.
They were not tasked to put forth a recommendation. They were just tasked to look at different options to provide to the Board of Selectmen who requested that report. They reported to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, who makes the decision to put the capital request for the Board of Education forward to other town bodies, which is what's before you tonight.
Right.
And similar, as Mr. Peterson had said, the Board of Education did vote back in 2024 for a very similar plan in terms of a new build at Dwight with an ECC wing. It was a continuation of years of discussions on how to address Dwight, as well as the need for early childhood space. Many public meetings, I understand the concern, but this wasn't this decision on school buildings and where to send children to school and what their programming looks like and what the educational specifications are for the schools, that is the purview of the Board of Education. They made their decision and moved it forward to town bodies. I appreciate wanting the backup for Svigal's. I can't speak to why it wasn't there. I'm happy to hear that many of you, it sounds like, had watched the presentation at other boards, had seen the backup. In the future, if you realize that something's missing that you need for an upcoming meeting, I would just ask that you just share it with the moderator, saying this would be helpful to have, so we could get it, so the appropriate town boards could get it to you.
I actually made that request I went to the the first selectman's office and asked for copies of the reports. And they were not given to me. And I also went to the town clerk's office and asked for copies of the reports.
The Board of Selectmen, I did not receive a hard copy of this report. Just so you know, we didn't have copies in in the first Selectman's office. I reviewed this report online, just because of the expense of making copies. So it wasn't that they were available. We didn't have spare copies around. We viewed this report online.
So just to kind of continue, do you have a projected duration for, from today, I guess, approval of this request through completion of the 1F project?
We're anticipating this to be a 3-year project from completion and approval of the process. It sounds like a long period of time, but it goes through design development, construction, and then completion and closeout of the project. So
And does that include the demolition of the existing school, or is that just?
it would include the demo of the existing school. That being said, there was no discussion of what would happen on that site other than the development for possible parking and other area. So that would all be included in that project closeout.
That actually seems really quick to me. I mean, you don't have an architect hired or an engineer hired yet. So, I mean, I imagine that's going to take quite a bit of time. And it would seem to me that you'll not be able to do that, get that building occupied in 3 years from today. That's what you're saying, 3 years from today?
3 years from approval of the project, yes.
What's the approval of the project? Is that like next week if we approve it?
We need your approval before we can even move to the state for approval of the project.
So it would be state approval of the
State
project?
approval of the project.
Okay. And how long does something like that take?
The reason we're before you tonight is we are hoping to hit submit for this application by November 1st. With the holidays in there, it tends to slow the process down, but we have been in contact with state representatives who are saying that they're willing to push this project along and go for special legislation if required. So we have support of the state to get this moving as quick as possible.
Okay. So it's okay then to keep the children and the staff and all the faculty in the Dwight School for another 3+ years?
We feel at this time it is. Anything that comes up along the process, we address right away. As I mentioned before, we did have the Yale report. We've added air filters to every classroom up there. There's dehumidifiers that run nonstop year round up there. So we have made steps to keep the building occupied.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, the Yale group has indicated that it is a safe spot for the children. So, I keep hearing all these opinions from, I guess it was, according to Jeff, the Board of Ed members felt that, there was moisture concerns and that it was a issue. And one of the main drivers why they voted for the new build, because of moisture concerns.
And as I said, we do run dehumidifiers up there 24/7, 365. There is moisture, but we address it and we continue to stay on top of it.
Okay. One thing when I did read or listen to the Board of Finance meeting, I was really surprised to learn that the Director of Parks and Rec, Anthony Calabrese, was not even aware of the fact that he was going to lose a large sports field complex up there until the night before he was asked to attend the meeting. Apparently, it's one of the largest sports complexes in Fairfield. It has a large adult softball field and 2 soccer fields. There's also a running track, I believe, as well. And so I'm wondering, does the new build include any provisions for replacing those fields that are going to be lost?
The scenario 1F that that Board of Ed favored and is before you reconfigure some of those fields. The conceptual designs for the new building do encroach upon that flat space a bit, so it would not be the same size space available now that as there is now in the new building, but there would be soccer field available in that space. So yes, the field considerations were something that came up throughout the working group process. The town was very concerned at the time. The Gerber administration was very concerned to make sure that we're not losing things that we can't replace. And one of the things, not to go too deep into the Spiegel's report, which it seems like not many of you have seen, one of the options was to do a 10-site ECC building at the Giant Step site where there's currently an abandoned building. But in the Parks and Rec master plan, it's anticipated that their hope was to use that for additional field space. So by moving ahead with the Dwight plus ECC project as requested, as we're requesting, does leave that as an option for Parks and Rec to create more fields. So hopefully there will be some ability to hold field numbers stable.
Well, I mean, what I heard was the small soccer field could maybe be reconfigured there, but the large field would be lost and the large softball field would be lost. That was based on the Board of Finance meeting that I listened to the other night.
There's a softball field up there now that I think that in the current conceptual design, it would simply be a soccer field. There would not be enough space for a
Small soccer field.
But it's not a huge complex up there. It's got a large single field that's used for multiple purposes, but not multiple fields.
I was quoting Mr. Calabrese when I said that. I wrote it down from what he said at the meeting. Sure, yeah, sorry, Laura. Pardon?
The track up there is not like a track at the high schools. It's a warning track, just for the public in terms of what's up there. And I think that as the building committee moves forward with a design and construction, maintaining field space will be a priority and green space there. You know, the Spiegel's report was a very high level conceptual design, but they're not design documents. You know, this is going to go out to bid. I mean, once the architect gets down and gets more specific, the building might move, the design might change. Protecting playgrounds and green space and our fields will be a priority in the next phase. As Mr. Peterson said, you know, in Spiegel's looking at this is part of a larger conversation, I think, in terms of these other sites and field space in town. Mentioned at the Board of Selectmen meeting, there's supposed to be a town-wide facilities commission, which has not been active for a number of years. I would be looking to reinstate that committee to the point of having a more public discussion outside of the normal boards that are very often our meetings are filled with other business, to kind of explore what to do with Giant Steps. If the Turner Army site comes online in the coming years, looking at future school renovation projects that also have field space, Mona Terrace, what we could potentially do with that property. That is a larger discussion, which I think should be happening with a different body. You know, not to bring it back, that right now it's really just the need for a new build at Dwight, and to meet the needs of a growing early childhood population and meeting the educational needs of those kids, which is not a new conversation that this town has been having in a public meeting for, well, when I first got on the board, it was priority number one, and that was back in 2017.
Jeff had said at the Board of Finance meeting that I think the Board of Ed's goal is to have 3 ECC sites, each with 5 sections.
Correct.
Yeah, and that they would be spread out throughout the town.
Correct. So
Yeah.
and this is where like the Jennings scenarios in the Svigals report come into play too. This was our hope all along because Jennings is the next on the list for a major renovation. If we build 5 ECC sites at Jennings, 5 ECC sites at Dwight, and maintain the 5 ECC classrooms that we have at Ward, it provides a greater geographic spread than what we have now, which is contained almost entirely between Ward and Stratfield, with only 2 classrooms at Holland Hill as overflow right now.
Right, so you would you maintain the Stratfield ECC?
No, the point, the longer term, the medium term plan, let's say, is right now McKinley is a very crowded school. Stratfield is able to handle the 5 ECC classrooms because they have the space for it. Were we to get 5 ECC classrooms at Jennings online, we would be able to move some classrooms from Stratfield to Jennings, and then potentially do some redistricting to move some McKinley kids to Stratfield and ease the crowding at that school, which is pretty acute.
So, I mean, geographically, I live in Greenfield Hills, so I know it's kind of out of the way. And it would seem to me that it would be asking a lot to put 3- and 4-year-olds on a school bus for a half an hour to get up to Dwight to attend preschool.
I would actually flip that a little bit and say that there are kids currently on Greenfield Hill that may need to be on a bus for that amount of time to come down to Ward.
But those
or to
kids,
Stratfield.
those kids' parents chose to move to Greenfield Hill, so they're already there. And if they have to go a little bit further to get to an ECC classroom, that was their choice. You're asking parents from, the furthest reaches of town to have their kids go on a school bus for 30 minutes.
Okay.
To,
Yeah, I'd like to keep the discussion focused on the bonding resolution in front of us and the proposal for the Dwight rebuild right now.
well, this is part of the Dwight rebuild because it's about the 5 ECC
I think
classes.
it's more of a values conversation in terms of, I understand your feelings about kids busing, but I want to stay a little more focused just on
I'm
the
happy to just wrap
classrooms
that up
proposed on
quickly. I
Dwight.
mean, these are questions that Board of Ed members have asked and discussed. The geographic spread of ECC classrooms has been an element of our debate for a long time. Understand where you're coming from with that, but I would also throw into the mix that when it comes to special education, it's not always about somebody choosing to be there. Family can have a need emerge. Who's lived in their place all their life, and the only resource for them is all the way across town. So I understand what you're saying. These are discussions that we've had within the Board of Ed, sympathetic to that, but trying to find some way to make a better geographic spread of ECC classrooms has been on our minds for quite some time.
And the ECC isn't really just about special ed, right? It's early childhood. It's really preschool.
It's preschool both for children with special needs and their peers who may not have those needs.
And in the Dwight district, I believe I heard, maybe it was at the Board of Finance meeting, there are 6 children right now that are in district that would be candidates for the ECC at Dwight from that geographic district.
From just that catchment area, but there are other areas, the Mill Hill area, the Riverfield area, the Burr area, they'll likely fill into those seats at Dwight.
And I'm just wondering who came up with the idea that 5 sections of ECC were warranted for Dwight. I mean, to me, it would seem like maybe 2 would be appropriate.
This
And
again was an
wouldn't you still get the 15% rebate or reimbursement if you did 2 sections versus?
Yes, but this is actually based on educational design. The educational design was to try to create what I've been calling a critical mass of classrooms, of ECC classrooms, where the staff can collaborate, can work together, can service most efficiently. Our ECC staff for years has asked for fewer sites, fewer larger sites. It's proven extremely difficult to do that, this is where our educational staff has decided to move forward with this model of 3 5-section ECC sites in different areas of town.
And so I think, to their point, the fewer larger sites would be giant steps and have 10 sections of ECC, and it's a centrally located
I hear you. I do want
spot.
to,
It would be great.
I do want to stay focused and just remind the body that our purview, I think these are important questions to understand ultimately why this proposal was chosen. I think it's important to remember that as a body, we are either going to make a decision to approve this bonding resolution or not. We do not have the authority to choose how many ECC classrooms, for example. So I do want to stay a little more focused on that. Representative Shea, I wasn't sure if you had additional questions. I know there's.
Well, I do, but apparently I'm not going to be able to ask them because they don't affect the actual question on the point of discussion. So I'll pass for now.
Okay. I believe on my list I have so far Representative Zezima, Representative Carson, and I believe I see Representative McCloat's hand. So Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esmond, District 4. Thank you for being here. So a couple of questions about, issues pertaining to contingency have come up and budget overruns. So we have a design of 12.5%, a construction of 2%, and then that escalation just to the midpoint of 12.8. So that one will then roll into the last, if you're at your midpoint, and then that last phase will be another 12.8. Okay. And on the soft costs, sometimes somebody mentioned budget overruns. I think sometimes soft costs are where budget overruns happen. Is the 20% you feel sufficient?
We feel 20% is a sufficient number. In the past, we've carried less than 20%, and that's where we've run into the overruns. So we
Okay.
felt comfortable moving with the 20%.
Yeah, I know they can be upwards of 30. And just to address Representative Colburn's, concerns, how do we get here? With a fairly long timeline perspective, historical perspective, and it's not always, intentional in a, in a negative way, but we get here because lots of times we defer, we put things off, we kick cans down the road. Sometimes we have to. Sometimes there are, serious competing capital projects. But Dwight School has been around in need of renovations, and I think those plans came and went at various times. And like anything else, like air conditioning, I went to the capital project planning meeting, and you can see air conditioning literally double because of the many years that people have said we can't afford this, we shouldn't do this. I'm not suggesting that's what happened here, but I think we have seen this project escalate in cost as we have lengthened the timeline of sitting down and getting something on paper. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I agree we can see some additional information that we didn't have tonight, but we are not taking binding votes tonight, and we frequently get that information between a committee meeting and a regular meeting, and I hope with quick dispatch that we will get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. Just to reiterate the process, the Board of Ed is the normal way that they choose which plan to do. Has that gone out? You haven't gone out of the normal process to do that, right?
No, the only thing that was added to this process was, again, we made our initial request in the fall of 2024. It was decided at that time to invest the money in the working group project. That was a decision. The Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance did not put our request on their agenda, preferring instead to go through this process with the hope of getting better numbers, doing more comprehensive work, really drilling down, getting the best numbers, looking at multiple projects and how they could all fit together. But then at the end of that, my board determined that a new build was still our preference. And that's how the request came before you. So there was an intervening event, but during which we got really, a very comprehensive report, that I think made many of our members more confident in the request that they had made a year earlier.
But it's the Board of Ed that makes the decision.
The
It never
request
goes, no one else has normally in the past made the decision past you. or not you, right? It's up to the Board of Ed to make the decision of which plan to do or what we should do as far as a rebuild.
We
Just
have-
trying to
we-
understand the process.
Yeah, we have made this request based on what we believe is in the best educational interest of the children of the town. And using the best numbers that we have, that we got through the working group process.
And I have another question about reimbursements. Do you have any sense of the chances of us getting the reimbursement? And in light of, do we have to worry because federal dollars may not, with all that not being sent, is that going to impact the state's ability to give us a reimbursement? And when would we know if we got the reimbursement?
You don't know about the reimbursement, total reimbursement until the project is completed and audited. So it's quite a bit away. As for federal dollars, I can't speak to how the state funds their reimbursements. That being said, something to keep in mind though is that during the Mill Hills and the Holland Hill projects, those were remodels. So they're during the audit process, there's ineligibles discovered and they say, well, this is a maintenance issue, so it's not eligible for reimbursement. This is a maintenance issue, it's not eligible for reimbursement. With a new build, it is 100% eligible because there's no maintenance on a new building that would be deferring.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Representative McClote.
Before I begin, did anyone else want to say something? Because I know I'm a second speaker.
I have Representative Ludwigsack, Representative O'Neill, and Representative Blanchard. So Representative Ludwigsack, why don't you go for it?
Christine Ludwigsack, District 8. Thank you very much for your time tonight, gentlemen. I think I have a few thoughts. My first, just to kind of mention, and I know there's been said many times, and we've had a few points of order, and I absolutely respect that, the purview of the RTM with this voting item. But I do think it's very important for us to all understand the different options that went into $76 million, because everyone here is going to be asked about it once the public knows more about this dollar amount. So I think it's very important that we know why we decided to go with 76 million with the ECC as opposed to the 41 million without the ECC. So I think that all these questions that we're asking, as much as it's not within our opportunity to make any changes, we do need to understand them. So, and I think the best way to do that is to connect with the people who are behind that. So thank you again for your time this evening. I think I just did want to get clarification around the 20% soft costs or contingency costs that are in the mix. Given the magnitude of the project and the dollar amount, $12 million is a lot of money to have kind of unaccounted for in some respect that could be changed or variable within the project and timeline. Is there any accountability for that money, how it's distributed, since it won't come back before the body here at any point, right?
How it's distributed. So the all bills are paid through the building committee, and all building committees are public meetings, so anyone is welcome to attend those and see where the money is being spent, how it is being spent, and we always encourage people to attend those meetings whenever possible to see where the money is actually going and what it is going to.
Dwight Building Committee, sorry, that it's the Dwight Building Committee that would be making the decisions on how that money gets spent, correct? So even though, so we see kind of other information or other distributions in the plan before us, but we kind of, that's a pretty large dollar amount to not have too much information on.
Yes, so again, the building committee, now that they are established, you guys just did that. They're going to be meeting this week to establish their chair and get established through that process. And they will, again, all their meetings are public, and they will be taking on the design work of this project as their next step. And they will be open to designs will be available at those meetings to look at, and that will drive the cost as well. So we, again, encourage everyone to attend.
Thank you. And again, I think that I think everyone here is in agreement that we would very much like to do something with Dwight, and we do need to move forward. And I think it's just a matter of the dollar amount that has all the questions and concerns. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill, District 5. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone sitting up there. As someone who has followed this project through the Board of Education and the other town boards for the last year and a half, I know a lot of people have put a lot of work and a lot of time into this. I just had one thing I wanted to clarify about the state reimbursement and have on the public record. It's my understanding that hopefully when this is completed and we do receive that reimbursement, that the state mandates that we keep those 5 ECC classrooms as early childhood classrooms for 10 years, but then they can be changed if need be after the 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct when you're dealing with a renovation and adding, or if you're adding space within a larger building. One of the things that was brought up during our discussion about the potential 10-site ECC at the Giant Steps, if you build a single-purpose pre-K building, we would have to maintain that level of programming at that site for 20 years. Otherwise, we'd forfeit the reimbursement. So yes, so 10 years with the Dwight, but 20 years if we built a freestanding standalone. Oh,
Just to, the question about state reimbursement, and it might have been said, but there's legislation now that if you add additional programming for early childhood, it's an additional 15% reimbursement on the entire project. If you add dedicated space for special education, and Dwight will include that, a CLC classroom, it'll be an extra 15% just on that space dedicated to special education. We've been in close contact with our state delegation on this. They know it's a priority, and we're counting on them all to advocate to move this project forward, hopefully once it gets past this board.
So theoretically, if 15 years from now, we needed to use those classrooms for elementary space or something else within the elementary school, that would be feasible.
under the current legislation as it is today, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Blanchard.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Rob Blanchard, District 6. I think this has pretty much been touched on between Representative Carson and O'Neill. But are we pretty confident on the reimbursement rates? Because I know initially the town's going to be on the hook for everything, and then the balance would be 26 million. But when you're dealing with millions of dollars, if we don't get that rate from the state, and it doesn't have anything to do, luckily, with federal dollars, it's all state dollars bonded over time. Could we end up owing 30 million or 35 million? I just want to make sure that that number is fairly concrete. And I know that it's a little bit of a chicken and egg with the state. They want to see that you've got a plan together. But I do think that we can start working with them in more of a sidecar fashion and bringing them along in this process to make sure that they're in the loop. I know their preference probably is going to be a new build rather than a renovation because of the longevity and the value when the state's on the hook for it, and ensuring that we get decades worth of use out of these buildings. But have they given any indication as to what they're comfortable with reimbursement wise?
So as you know, it's all a vote. So there's no guarantees ever with the reimbursement, which is why the state requires us to come before you for full funding before they'll even hear it as a project. They want to know that the town was willing to cover the cost of it, and then they work from there. I can tell you that from our experience, from what I've heard, because the town has not done this other than McKinley, the reimbursement rate is a much better opportunity for a new build because it is, like I said, 100% reimbursable. There's no ineligibles in that point. A Mill Hill project, or I'm sorry, a Holland Hill project was a 26% reimbursement rate. And at the end of the day, with the audit and everything, I think it came in right around 18 to 20% reimbursement. So at a 26% as presented, the state ended up coming back with a reimbursement of 18 to 20%.
Have we looked at kind of comparable communities that have new elementary schools going in to see kind of, I know it's all dependent upon the ability to pay and the worth of a town and financial circumstances, but are most similar towns coming in around their estimated reimbursement rates? Like I know Trumbull, for example, just got funding for new elementary school.
So again, with a new build, it's 100% reimbursable. So there's very little they could come back and say isn't eligible at that point. Other towns, I don't know what they've done as far as new builds versus renovate as new. So there's different options, and with your different options becomes your different reimbursement rates. I think we're very comfortable with this. As I've said, we've been very closely working with our state reps, and they have made it very clear that they are advocating for this as well, and will do what they need to do to keep this moving and to push for the reimbursements.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before I go back to members that have spoken, are there any members in person or online? Representative Britton.
There we go. I still don't get, Peter Britton, District 1, sorry. I am confused still that the largest budget item in this is the soft costs, and I didn't hear what really is attributed to that soft cost. I don't get it yet as to what that is.
So the largest budget, the soft cost is really contributed to, for instance, we come before you for seed money for this. There's unknowns in there, so that's why they carried the high contingency for the unknowns. The land up there as well, as you know, it's a very steep slope, so there's a lot of unknowns within that, and they felt that carrying this number, and we agreed with them, would give us the best opportunity to actually be able to either hold fast with the number or at best give money back to the town at the end of this project.
Well, that would be nice. Okay, so it's just a contingency.
There's a lot of contingency built onto this number.
Well, yeah, on that point, actually, there's already contingency of 2%, right?
Yep, for the construction project, whole
So
project.
that's $1 million. And you have a escalation here to midpoint, 7 million.
It's just so you know, it's very common to see these contingencies in a project like this because we are using schematic design numbers to build a budget, which is why the budgeting people use these contingencies in there. We're not at design development phase yet of this project. That's when we start tightening the belt, looking at it. The building committee will start looking at where things can be valued engineered. So there's always the opportunity there. But it's a standard practice to use the higher contingency numbers because of the phase that we are at this point.
I mean, I understand that. It just seems it ultimately comes down to where you become suspect of the 76
Yep.
really being a concrete number. If we have contingencies of $1 million, we got soft costs of 12, escalation of 7, that's 20 million bucks right there.
And again, I would say that we have worked not only with Svigals, but we worked with some of our contractors outside the Svigals who are doing similar buildings and similar projects throughout the state. And without even knowing where Svigals numbers were, their total project costs were lining up with Svigals.
Even the soft cost.
Even the soft costs.
Can I just want to quickly make a clarification to that question because I think you might have missed. I think the soft costs, a lot of that has to do with furniture, fixtures, and equipment, right? So
FF&E is included in there.
that's a big
Playgrounds
part of
is
that soft
included in
cost,
that.
right?
Yep, there's a
So
lot
it's not
included with the soft.
contingency. It's for real stuff.
It is for stuff as well. Yep.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't done.
And I assume these numbers have that 5% and the 10% that we were talking about in that finance meeting that for over the 3 years escalations that inflation, whatever that's going to incur over this period. Is it built into these numbers?
Yes, so standard practice is to build your inflation numbers into the midpoint of the project. So that's what these numbers were based on.
In the 76 though?
In the 76, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Longo online.
Hi, Melissa Longo, District 1. Dwight is essentially in my backyard. So this is something that hits very close to home with me, constituents. I've been following this for, before I was even on the RTM. And so to hear all of this tonight is extremely helpful. Excuse me. And I appreciate all the hard work that has been. I know there's been so much back and forth over the years about this project. My concern, I guess, is after this meeting tonight, I believe districts 1, 2, and 3 will be heavily affected. The families, I know that our educators and our teachers come from all over, not just Fairfield, but other parts of the state to teach our kids. And I was just thinking, as we were kind of looking over what ultimately should have been sent to us, this is a very big, huge project, and I'm just very disappointed in the lack of, care that was taken to give us the proper information so we could sit here before you, both of you, with some questions. But I was wondering if between now and next week, if there is another way that we can make, especially our districts and these families that are going to be affected by this. I know it's been on the agenda, or it's been public knowledge in other parts of, throughout this entire process. And, I think we all know sometimes people pay attention and sometimes they don't unless it's right in their face. And so I was just curious if there is a plan or any kind of consideration for these families. Last year was last year, and, here we are in the middle of a school year. And so some of these families, might not be affected in another year or two. And then you have families that have kindergartners and first graders and ECC, coming from not only the Greenfield Hill area, but other areas as well. How we plan on keeping these families engaged and keeping their input as to, what's going to happen as far as the new schematics. Also, when this is put into place, doing a walkthrough, seeing, the specs of what's going to happen. I'm not an architecture by any stretch of the imagination. So to have visual representation of what we're looking at as a community, as the taxpayers, but also more importantly, as the families who are putting their children through this, I didn't know if there was any, forward thought process as to, what can happen between, I feel like we have a lot to discuss and a lot to process in this next week, especially for the districts that are going to be heavily affected by this. So I just wanted to get, I know most of us on this body are parents, and if it's concerning, and I just want to make sure that we are, representing our constituents in the best way possible with this project going forward. So I just wanted to know if anyone has given any thought to that, or if you have, what the plans might be. So that was just my question. And I know this is a huge undertaking, and I'm happy that this is finally getting resolved. I know it's going to take 3 to 4 years to make this happen, but I think that the community is going to appreciate the outcome in the long run. So thank you.
Thank you. Before you answer, I can just say, Representative Longo, thank you for those questions. I would certainly also encourage, especially because it is so close in your district, to encourage constituents. They certainly can come next week and offer public comment and ask questions and, comment. And also, we'll hear from our presenters as well, but to remind them that all building committee meetings are certainly open to the public, and I'd hope that they would come and be engaged in that process as well.
No, and I was going to say that exact thing. Going forward, well, into this project, the Dwight community has been very involved. If there's members on the board who are parents of Dwight kids, and also we've, Dwight PTA reps have been very involved in coming to our meetings, coming to other meetings of other town bodies. Going forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, other building committees have had their meetings at those schools, to try to leverage that, the ability to meet and to to interface directly with the community, so the community can stay right on top of it. The PTA will obviously be a major partner in that. But I was on the Holland Hill. Well, I was the liaison to the Holland Hill Building Committee a million years ago. We had all those meetings there. The principal was there for all those meetings. Interested members of the public could come, and sometimes they were these dry half-hour meetings of we're just approving a couple of agenda items, and sometimes there would be tours of construction that is underway and things that are in process. And that was also a very exciting part of the process. So going forward, it's going to be a very public process. I do hope that we will be able to, that the PTAs will kind of rally their troops and get parents involved and see how the project goes forward, because it is something that the public is going to be very interested in. And that's why it's important to be done in public. And I think that past building committees have done that very successfully.
And just a reminder, two members of the Dwight Building Committee are Dwight parents. One, her
Yes.
children are going to age out, but Ms. Olson, I
Mhm.
think her child is a kindergartner, so she will be involved in the process and be bringing news back to the PTA and to the school community, which is why we hear your concerns, Ms. Longo, about wanting parents to be engaged and be able to follow the project outside of, a public building committee. And of course, Board of Education, those meetings are going to be getting updates. Building committees report to the Board of Selectmen. We'll be getting updates as well.
Okay,
And
thank you very much. I just, I'll do my best as well to, reach out to the people in my district, just so that, they're informed, and I'm just happy to hear that it's, a very transparent, open dialogue. And I think that sometimes is a concern, when you're parents and there's emotion attached to certain things, you just kind of want to, make sure that their voices are going to be, heard in all of this, and they can see exactly what's going on, just to kind of, reassure parents of what's going to be happening in their children's future. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Walk.
Jaywalk District 5. It's good to see all of you guys. And I'm just happy to hear our first selectman, Christine Vitale, say that we're thinking of bringing back. I have a question too, Margaret, so don't worry. So bringing back the Building Facilities Committee. They do a great job. They did a great job when the committee was formed. Back when they renovated Stratfield School. I went to all the meetings, so I recommend whoever has questions to go to these meetings. I went to every meeting at the Stratfield School renovations, and anyway, also I just want to say, when you guys decide and this project gets into fruition and everything's approved, and you're thinking to moving the school to a different location in order to, because where are the students going to go once? Is this going to happen in the summertime? The school's going to be would be built?
Well, certainly the construction, what's going to take place while school is, we're going to build it right next to the existing school. Obviously, there are things that we'll be able to do when kids are in the building, and things that we will not be able to do. And we're going to have to be very stage the construction carefully to make that happen. But so far we've been assured that is not going to be a problem. And again, the fact that we can keep the kids on site in the current building without shipping them on buses that we don't necessarily have drivers for all over town to empty classrooms that we don't necessarily have. It removes a lot of disruption for the families in that region, and doing it as a separate building rather than we were told at one point by the working group, just kind of back of the envelope, if we wanted to do one of the renovate like new and add an addition and try to phase it so that it would have kids in the building while we were doing the additional work, might add an additional year and an additional 20% to the cost. So that was not a super attractive option. And then obviously if something gets uncovered in the building, it was asbestos that we didn't know was there, then we have difficult questions to ask. Can the kids remain? Do we have to send them out? Doing it as a separate building, not connected to the current building, with construction traffic being somewhat separate from parent traffic, we think is the way to go.
So you remember, Jeff, the Stratfield renovation. So
I do.
they offered students and parents to move their child because some of the work was being done during the school year. So they were afraid of children who have asthma, and then they were offered to go to Jennings, I believe. And some of the students, I think 1 or 2 students did that. So the other thing I was going to say is I know my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is now worried of where the money is going to go, where it's going to be spent. I have full trust into you, all of you, that this is going to be a great project. I've been an advocate for not kicking the can down the road for our schools since I've come on the RTM. Basically, the other thing, just want to just say one thing to Representative Chris Shea said that this could be the biggest project ever that we take on to approve. McKinley School was built, Ludlow School was built. I'm sure those projects were very expensive too, and they were done very well. So, all right, thanks for everything.
Thank you. I'm going to just wait in just 1 second just to see if there's other people that have not spoken on this item. Representative Barrett.
Okay, here we go. Steve Barrett's District 7. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions here. If we do not approve this next week, it probably goes till, November, December, and then that will obviously delay the state approval. So whereas it might take 3 school years to get these kids into a new building, it might actually be 4 if that process were delayed by any significant. Would that be correct in assuming that?
That is correct. And also another thing to keep in mind is that we've not heard officially, but we have heard that there is already talk about capping the 15% reimbursement for the ECC and also the special education portions. So by delaying the project, we would be putting that at risk of any potential changes coming down the line.
Hypothetically, if there was a significant element of the people on this board that felt they did not have enough information by next week and voted that they didn't want to vote on it that week and would like to postpone it, it would significantly affect those students, those teachers that are working at a building, having to go another extra year perhaps at that older building. And me personally, as someone who spent as a student and as a teacher, spent 50 years in public school buildings, just looking at the possibility of that extra year might be significant in terms of that. And I'm going to do everything possible between now and next week to learn what I need to learn, go through whatever's sent to me so that I can make a decision next week and not postpone it beyond that. Again, at this point, I don't believe I have enough info to make an informed decision, but I will make it every reason possible to make certain that I learn everything I need to learn by next week so I can make that decision next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I very much appreciate members feel like they don't have the information they need. I'm happy to answer whatever questions. I'm planning to be here next week. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly in the intervening period, I will try to be as responsive as possible. We certainly don't want anyone to feel like their questions have not been answered, and anything that I personally can do, I'm happy to do.
Thank you. In terms of representatives who have spoken and are back on the list, I have Representatives McClote and Colburn. Are there, oh, okay, hold on. Let's get everybody. Is there anyone who has not yet spoken? Representative Rock.
Hello, Dave Rock, District 2. Just, I did watch the Board of Finance presentation and saw the backup and went through it. It's quite lengthy. Appreciate it. I know that we're only voting here on 1F and not any other plan. So it just, because I'm not remembering are we doing the access road through the trees, the woods?
No.
We're not doing that. Okay.
No.
And so
Conservation Commission determined that was not.
They said no.
They said no.
Okay. Okay. And so so is there still an opportunity at this point because I never like losing fields and I know that it's still up in the air a little bit. But there is an extremely large parking lot I mean, and I know that is because of how we have to build. Is there any consideration to, as we get further into design, where that parking lot would shrink somehow and we could somehow gain a field, or is that just beyond the scope at this point?
My take on what the working group said was that obviously as we go forward, the configuration of the parking lot may change, but it's a difficult space to put a field in.
Yeah.
Because of the way that we're moving where the footprint of the school is up into the slope and a little bit onto the flat
Right.
behind the current school. We will have to, when we do the demolition, we'll have to level that. There will be some, consideration of how we can park and make, additional traffic flow. But I don't know that that there was thought that that was going to be enough of a space for a completely new field.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could somehow claw it back, but appreciate that.
I was just going to say, as we get into design development, that would be something the Dwight Building Committee will definitely have to keep in mind and work with. Nothing is set in stone at this point. There's going to be some decisions made, some votes made at those meetings. So again, I just encourage everyone who has a decision or would like to make their opinion known through that process to attend those meetings. They are public and they are votes.
So just a follow-up here. So I think is there a 9v9 and a 6v6 field up there and what is the current complex configuration on fields?
Fortunately, I do not know what currently is up there with.
Yeah, I
Parks
think
and Rec.
there's a 9v9 and a 6v6, something to
wanna
that
say I
effect. And I
heard
think
that,
that
but I
we're
don't wanna be
losing one
held
of the
to it.
smaller fields. So it's not a very large complex is what I'm getting at.
They're overlaid. The fields
They're
are
overlaid.
overlaid. So it's
Okay.
not like we're running 3 different events at one time up
Okay,
there.
so that makes me feel much more comfortable that we're not losing a tremendous amount of space and it was not a large sports complex place to begin with. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to members that have spoken, anyone else that has not spoken? Okay, I'm going to go back through the list of people that I have that have spoken. If other members who haven't want to join in, I will interject them in. So Representative McClote.
Megan McLeod, District 2. I've got a lot, so I'll go through them. A couple of my colleagues have used the word disappointed. I'm going to be stronger. I'm sure you're not surprised. I'm kind of appalled at how we're handling this from a procedural perspective. I've already raised my concerns about the transparency, but I also just think it's asking a lot of us as volunteer panel members, elected officials, to just know that there's information out there, and we refer to the Board of Ed consistently as if it's operating as its own entity. And the funny thing about the state of Connecticut is a Board of Ed can't exist without a municipality in the state of Connecticut, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have to be here before us having to ask for approval as the final rubber stamp, as my other colleague put it. And I wish I had $1 for every time the Svigal report was mentioned tonight, the same report we don't have, because I'd be able to contribute to this really large ask. But that being said, there's been a lot of point of orders raised about questions being asked, which I hope everybody on this body and the public who eventually watches this realizes we might not have to ask all these questions if we had that report. So I cannot emphasize enough how I think it's disingenuous at best, if not deceptive at worst. But that being said, I have a lot of questions. So earlier Rep. McCabe kind of flippantly said that if you don't like the project, I want to be abundantly clear. This is my district. I live on Reading Road. I probably live closer to this school than anybody other than Rep. Longo. And I'm one of the ones that had a proud lawn sign on my lawn that said Save Dwight School, because I moved to Fairfield because of Dwight School. I moved to where I am because of the importance of investing in this. So I take tremendous offense to that concept, because I think none of us can decide whether or not we like this project, because this body doesn't know the full details of this project. This body has not been given this report, which leads me to my next question. First question, perhaps, is who printed and distributed this report? Was it the Board of Ed or was it the RTM?
That is done through the Board of Ed.
Okay, so there was a decision to print and provide and furnish this tonight. And it says very clearly in the footnote that it was printed back on September 22nd.
This was printed and presented, same book, to the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance.
Great. And of those boards, how many of those boards were presented with the Svigal study? I know the Board of Finance was. We've already identified that. Was Board of Selectmen presented with it, or were they at least sent an electronic link?
The Board of Selectmen got an update from Svigal's being that it was a town study, separate. We did not have Svagals present when we voted on the bonding resolution that's before you tonight,
But you had an update, meaning a presentation from Svagal.
separate from a Dwight funding request. The
Okay,
ta- the
right, but it
town-
wasn't the first time you've seen
Well,
it, like
the-
tonight we're
The
being asked.
town commission, that was a town commissioned study
Mhm. Approved for funding, I think, by this board, right?
that the Board of Selectmen put on its agenda, that I put on the Board of Selectmen
Right,
agenda.
so it had to be
And
approved.
so we had received a update and the Board of Education received a longer update.
Okay, so,
And the Board of Finance, I believe, requested,
yep, and had a 4-hour meeting, we've heard, yeah.
but we did not have it as backup. The Svagal report was not part of the backup to our bonding request.
But the Board of Finance was furnished with printed copies, right? Is that correct? By the Board of Ed?
Not by the Board of Ed. No.
Oh, so somebody else printed those large-scale copies, the one that you have in
I
front of
got
you?
this from Amazon.
Svagals, I think, brought a couple of copies. The town did not print these books.
Was Svagal asked to attend tonight?
That wasn't our decision to make. I have no insight into how you.
Who would have made that decision? I mean, you guys are the ones that come and put it on, request that it be on the agenda, right?
We are requesting that this be on the agenda. If there were more other requests for other information, we didn't receive them.
Okay.
We're not in charge of assembling your backup.
Right, I
mean,
just, like I
that's-
said, it's mentioned throughout, the summary page is only 2.5 pages. It's mentioned 6 times and a whole bold asterisk about the Svagal report. Just, as we've all identified, it would have been very, very helpful. It would have saved a lot of this, and it's gonna save a lot for next week, too. That being said, I was taking frivolous notes because I didn't have access to the report, but you went through, A through G, and I missed A, the proposal. I have B is 41 million, C is 31 million, D is 44 million, E is 57 million with no ECC rooms. F, the one that you're proposing, not recommended by Svagal, but recommended by the Board of Ed, is 76 million with a 60 million after reimbursement. What is A? What was that amount, and what was that for, a full rebuild?
So no, the concept 1A was a like new renovation only, using the current footprint of the building with no additional square footage added.
Got it. And the cost?
And the cost for that, the construction cost, the raw construction cost, $30,955,638. But the minimum estimated municipal cost, and that is after reimbursement, $24,222,197.
Again, forgive me for scribbling down. I feel like I'm
Not at all.
writing down a jury instruction in a criminal trial. And G, what was the last option?
There was no G, this is 1 through F.
1
or
through F.
A through F,
Okay,
sorry.
so to be clear and for the record, we are proposing the most expensive one, which again, I'm not saying I'm against. I believe in what we're trying to do here. Just trying to be clear with the numbers, would have been clear if we had it in the backup.
The 1F, both on the raw construction cost and the minimum estimated municipal cost, is the highest of the 6 scenarios. But we thought it was, our board felt it was the best value.
Right. And I know you mentioned in E, no ECC space. I totally agree with your argument. The value, 57 million, no ECC space, 60 million after reimbursement for F, and you get the ECC space. Sounds like a bang for your buck.
The delta there is about $3 million
Right,
after
totally
renovations,
agree.
or reimbursements, yes.
So in terms of other towns, of the 169 towns in our state, how many other towns have ECC classrooms?
A large number of them have those programs. The program is mandated by state law.
Right. So
That we need to educate those children from age 3.
do you know how many of the towns have gotten reimbursement for a similar proposal like this?
I'm not sure how many others are.
I do not know at this time how many have applied for. This is a fairly new bump. The 15% bump is a fairly new.
Am I
thing
correct?
to
It's like
do.
within the last year or two?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So arguably it's probably small, but we might be one of the first test cases.
I'm sorry to
which-
interrupt you, Representative McClough. I believe, we also have another member of the Board of Ed here who I'd also have some information on to answer these questions. I don't know if she wants to come to the podium. Nope.
Looks like that's a no.
I just want to make sure in case there was.
In terms of, there's been a lot of discussion about how a town hall meeting would be helpful. And I can't emphasize enough, as somebody who does not have children in the district, again, Board of Eds only exists in the state of Connecticut by municipal law when there's a municipality tied to it. You guys get your funding because we get funded as a municipality, right? But the taxpayers pay. As far as I know, I don't get a credit on my property tax bill for not having kids and sending them to Dwight. So when we talk about having a conversation with the parents and the PTA and all these great things that you guys have absolutely admirably done on behalf of the Board of Ed. Have we ever thought about the fact that it's the entire tax base that's paying this bill and being asked to pay this bill, which is, of course, why I'm arguing it's incredibly important that this body have been presented with the information, because this body is approving the final funding. And the final funding is on behalf of every single taxpayer in this town. So we can argue about all these special meetings and being part of the process, right? And people who have lived in the district know. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything for my elderly neighbor who's going to have to pay the same taxes I do when this goes up, right? And hasn't had children in the system for 65 years. So has there ever been a discussion at any of your Board of Ed meetings, any of the input, lots of very invested parents, I give you that. I think they've done a great job advocating for this. I bought their lawn sign, like I said. Has there ever been a discussion about a town hall meeting? And maybe this question is for you, for Selectman Vitale, as to why this would be important for the entire town to know why we're having perhaps the largest capital expense request on behalf of the Board of Ed in this town's history. Because I think that would be a good idea. And I don't know if it's not too late to do it.
We haven't had a discussion of having a town hall meeting. Svagals has presented at 2 public meetings, probably close to 8 hours. The public comment, could be public comment at those meetings. And in terms of.
But they were always Board of Ed
capital-
meetings, right?
No, the Board of Finance.
Right, most recently, right.
Most recently.
Right, when we're asking
And
for
it-
the money from the town.
And the Board of Selectmen, at the Board of Selectmen meeting, received a presentation of Svagals also.
So we're the only body
and-
that hasn't, am I correct in that? We're the only body that has not been presented to by Svagal or given the Svagal report.
Correct.
Okay. So is that something you'd be willing to do for Selectman Vitale, is consider a town hall meeting to educate the voters on the $76 million funding request?
I mean, if you would like to have a Svagals present to you next week, I can see if they can come and to present to you. But right now, I feel like there's been many public opportunities for the public to attend public meetings, to email the representatives, to give public comment on this. And I am concerned about the timing of moving this project forward.
Didn't the report come out just a few weeks ago, the final report? August 27th. So you're saying we've had public meetings about the cost?
Yes, our meeting with Seagulls that we invited actually we invited everyone from the Board of Selectmen at the time, was on the 3rd of September.
So we're talking 6 weeks ago, and we think the public has had adequate knowledge, even though this body hasn't even seen and been distributed that report. We
I'm just
think
telling you what our meeting schedule was. The report was made public on the 27th of August. We had a meeting with Seagulls. It was many hours on the 3rd of
the
September.
$76 million number, was that known to the public before 6 weeks ago?
It might have been 74 originally, when Svagals first presented it.
Which was when?
In August.
This August.
This August.
Okay.
Based on feedback from the Board of Education, they revised that number, which was probably a month ago.
Okay.
But this, I mean, the 74 million was discussed in our capital planning workshop. Granted, Svagals did not present, but there was backup, reference to the report then. So the number has been out publicly for two months.
Okay.
And
just so-
shared in multiple meetings.
Except to this body. 2 months, $76 million we're asking.
And but shared at the capital planning workshop, which representatives of all bodies were invited to that meeting, and was a public meeting that was noticed to the public to participate in, shared through town communications, the cost of this project, shared the cost of the project, I think in my last newsletter, in terms of where it was, in terms of.
A point of clarification
Yeah.
was that the capital planning meeting, they did want the special meeting to be held the following week with the presentation from Segal, right? Wasn't that determined at that point during the capital planning meeting, even though we had it on September 25th? No one knew all that information until the following October 6th with the special meeting that was called Board of Finance, which was very, very helpful.
At that meeting, I thought that actually all boards were going to watch that we knew that Svigals was going to be coming, that they would be presenting. I don't think the Board of Finance had set the meeting at the capital planning workshop. There was discussion that it would be beneficial to have another meeting that Svigals presented. Although they presented at the Board of Ed, that representatives of that meeting was like, there would be another public presentation of Svigals for anybody who was interested. I did not coordinate that special meeting. That was not, it was outside of the Board of Selectmen at that point. But I would take issue with this being not publicly shared. A town hall, in terms of, back to my comment, the discussion is that the Board of Education, put forth this funding request, and the approach that they're taking on a new build versus a renovation and all the reasons why, where the ECC is, hasn't really changed, and it has been years in the making, this discussion of why this current plan is being put forward. The only thing that is really changing is what the number is before you. A year ago, it was 60, it was 64,
Sure.
and now it is
76,
and is
right.
76, and that's, a year has passed, and we've just gotten better information.
And more time that goes on, it'll probably go up. I agree with you. I mean, that being said, though, at the end of the day, the buck stops here and the numbers matter. And that is why I cannot emphasize enough, it would have been very helpful to avoid so many of these questions if we just understood why things cost what they did. That's what I ask. When a contractor comes to my house and tells me it's $76 million to do this, I generally ask for a printout and a line item expense, right? We're just getting that in this way and not the entire report, which every other board has had access to. And again, I find that very deceptive, and I think it's unfortunate, and I think it's going to be unfortunate for the public.
I want to push back again about the word deceptive. This report has been in the public sphere for 2 months.
It has not been presented to this body, and the report has not been in the public
that's
sphere.
anyone being
And at
deceptive.
the onset, we asked if we could wait to see if we could get it disseminated, and the decision was made by the moderator. Obviously, she has that right to continue to move forward, but that's why we're going to have a lot more questions. That being said, was a question up, because obviously somebody made the decision to print these. Did anybody say, do we need to print this Fagal study, and a decision was made no, or was it a complete oversight?
I don't know that it was ever considered that the Board of Ed would present this Svigal's hard copy. It's not our report. It was a report contracted by the town.
Then why did it go to the Board of Finance? Who made that decision? The Board of Ed?
Not the Board of Ed. I mean, bringing our capital request to the Board of Finance. The discussion at that table and through Lori Charlton, their chair, was, can we stick a special meeting in between now and our vote in order to have a presentation from Svigals? That was something that I don't know who arranged that, whether that was the town or with Ms. Charlton directly. That wasn't the Board of Ed doing that. I went to that meeting. I frankly thought that I was going to be sitting there watching Svigals present. I wound up sitting at that table for 3.5 hours, answering questions alongside the Svigals presenter, which I was happy to do. But that was all organized by the Board of Finance. There's not a Board of Ed.
Okay. I mean,
choice.
obviously, if it was included in the backup, we might have had the opportunity to request that, but.
I just want to, the Svigals numbers, just in the backup that the Board of Ed did provide, there is detail.
I agree, there's
so
detail,
it
but
just-
certainly not $1 million worth, which we appropriated for the purpose of that big, beautiful book. So my point is, I think this body should have had access to that book. We don't need to keep beating the dead horse. We're going to be here at this point going 2.5 hours on this one agenda item. My last question is a substantive question. The Yale study, was that done by the Department of Environmental Research at Yale?
Trying to remember occupation, I believe it was the, off the top of my head, I believe it was the Occupational Health Department that did it. It was their chairperson who ran it, and she had a team working with her on that. And I would have to go back and confirm that I am stating the right department. The report does have the department name in it, and the report is available on both the town and the Board of Ed website.
Was it commissioned by the Board of Education or the Fairfield Department of Health?
It was commissioned it was requested by the Board of Education, and it was commissioned and run by the town's working group. part of that $1 million that was determined was used to evaluate the building.
Was the Fairfield Department of Health involved in any of that?
I do not believe they were, I do believe that the Yale group did work with the director of public health for the town. I know that they've been very involved with that building over the years, many times, but I was not at a meeting between the two of them, but I do know that they did speak.
And when was that study conducted?
It was
multiple months.
It was a multiple month process. It started, I think we got the final report in June, but it was through the spring and the summer, or through the spring as the weather changed to heat, from heating to cooling. And part of that reasoning was they wanted to evaluate the building at the different stages.
And was OSHA involved in that? Are there any pending OSHA complaints based
There-
on employees at Dwight?
There are no pending OSHA complaints at this time, and they were not involved in it because there's no OSHA complaints. OSHA gets very tricky, as I'm sure you know, because with staff, OSHA will step in. However, most of the concerns that come up are a few from staff, but a lot from parents.
From parents on behalf of
and
kids.
students, and OSHA will not get involved with those.
And last question, the cost of $950 per square foot, in your experience with our last, there's been some discussion about major building and renovation. Have we ever come close to that number in terms of a cost per square foot in commercial school construction?
So we have not in other projects. However, as we're moving through and with all the unknowns with tariffs and construction materials, we truly believe, speaking with many different contractors out there, that is a true number at this point for this type of project.
Do we think the 2% contingency is enough?
We do think that the 2% is a good number to bring because of the other contingencies within the project as well.
The soft costs you
The
were,
soft costs.
okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. I do want to note that while I know that this can't even talk, Svagal's document feasibility study is in fact a public document, it would have been helpful to be included in our backup. I think we've gotten that point down. I would also ask members that, looking back, our warning and backup was posted on October 14th. And so if, as you are looking through the backup in preparation for the meeting in the future, if you see that there's something that should be included, I would ask that you try and reach out to me ahead of time so we could have perhaps had this resolved prior to our meeting instead of just at the meeting, unless I understand sometimes we don't notice things until the last minute. But should a situation like this arise in the future, I would ask members to please give me a heads up ahead of time so I can try and get the issue resolved before our meeting. And Representative Colburn.
Alan Colburn, District 8. The $1 million that we appropriated came up before. Can you guys remind me exactly what that was for?
That was the school feasibility study for
So that
looking,
was-
and it was looking at Dwight, it was looking at feasibility for adding ECC space to Osborne Hill, it was looking at adding ECC space to Riverfield, it was looking at Mona Terrace, where the senior center is, it was looking at the abandoned building at Giant Steps to determine if that building would be suitable for a renovation. It was determined that it was not, that building needs to come down. I forget, and then just looking at the different scenarios at Dwight Elementary School, a renovate like new, renovate without an ECC, a new build.
Okay, thank you. Why did we ask for options for Dwight when it seems very obvious to me that we preferred this from the get-go of doing a new build?
I'll just say that the Board of Ed request in the fall of 2024 was for a new build plus 5 ECC classrooms. That request was not taken up by other town bodies. Mr. Gerber at that point wanted to realizing that there's a constellation of projects that are all interrelated. Wanted to get, I don't want to speak for him, but wanted to get better numbers, wanted to get a better grip on the global assortment of capital projects that are going to be coming before us. And that was the genesis of the working group project. And in that, I know in the working group, he was interested in looking at why do we need to do this in a way that's different than the previous renovations that we have done at other schools? So that was a question that the working group information was, led the Board of Ed to make the same decision that it made in the fall of 2024. Other people may come to different conclusions, but that having the better, more comprehensive information, I think, made many of our members more firm that this was the way to go.
Okay. I know that there's contingencies and we've had questions about that. My question is that the current proposal has students in place through the period of the project. Let's say that there is an unforeseen health or environmental or whatever it is circumstance that forces the children to and teachers to abandon Dwight and be bused to transported to other schools. Is that scenario built within these contingencies?
The short answer is no. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why the new build was attractive in the sense that, we are keeping the kids in a building that we have been told by studies is in good repair, although we are taking issues to address the moisture issues there. It's impossible to say what possible disasters we could foresee. Obviously, we will never have kids in a facility that's unsafe for them to be there, and it is a workplace, as other people have mentioned. We don't want to have an unsafe workplace for our staff either. But one of the reasons that my board favored this option was that there were fewer variables in terms of
which is preferable. I think everyone would agree with that. I do take a concern that is not a contingency that we plan for in a way, because I mean, you probably can tell I am very skeptical about this property just based on the number of people that I've heard in town that have said things that it does not feel like it is a safe health environment.
I understand that, but that's exactly why I went to the Yale School of Public Health to get
which I understand.
And I'd recommend everyone go to read that study. And it's not saying that there are no issues with that building. That building has issues that are commensurate with its age, and heavy use for decades.
Yeah.
But at this point, with the best scientific evidence that we have by third-party experts in the field, is that the school is safe for students and staff.
Yep. And my concern is really, and I'm not a construction person at all, but once you put a shovel in the ground and you have construction around a building like that, I can just see where something could potentially go wrong. So that is a concern that I have about the contingencies. I have two more questions. What assumptions about redistricting, and I know that is a very sensitive word, what assumptions about redistricting did we bake into this plan?
With Dwight in particular, there are issues of CLC classrooms, which are K-5 special ed classrooms, that years ago were at Dwight. After the renovation at Mill Hill were moved to Mill Hill. It was seen to be a better location for them because of air conditioning, a newer facility. We hope to bring some of those classrooms back to Dwight under the 1F scenario. That will get us a 15% renovation reimbursement for the area, for the square footage devoted to that program. It will also alleviate some overcrowding at Mill Hill, which currently is one of our more crowded schools as well. So in that sense, I wouldn't say redistricting, but there will be some classrooms that, families that may be currently districted to Dwight are currently bringing their kids for the CLC down to Mill Hill. We'll be able to bring them back to Dwight. But the reverse is also true for Mill Hill families.
Okay. And how does the project timeline compare to, I believe it was Representative Blanchard that said that Trumbull, I think, recently did an elementary school. I'm interested in how the timeline that you said 3 years, does that compare the same as other similar projects that have happened recently?
It is very similar to other projects of this type. I'm not intricately familiar with the Trumbull project, but the other construction projects at schools, sites like this that are new builds typically are a 3-year build-out project.
Okay. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys answering all of our questions. It is not a personal matter at all. It is really, this is just, I mean, it's $76 million. That is a weighty number, and everyone is going to pay for it. So thank you.
We understand, and we're trying to be here to help.
And just the feasibility study did inform, there's other information in there that I think will come back to body, so we can definitely present. I mean, there's information about Jennings and Giant Steps as well. So it's not like that study is going away. It's going to be a resource for the town for future decision-making as well.
Thank you. Representative Shea.
Thank you all again. Chris Shea, District 2. So just like a process question. I think we were asked to approve the Dwight School Building Committee in August. Is that right?
It was a couple of months back.
And at that time, I had,
It was a couple months back that the town, yeah.
no, I don't mean the members. I mean the concept of approving the charge for a building committee. Yeah.
In the late summer, in late August.
Yeah.
I think when it came first out of the first selectman's office into the Board of Selectmen.
So at that time, I had asked, gee, I mean, how can you have a building committee when you don't know what you're building? And the answer was, oh, well, we need to have a building committee in order to get the process started. You have to put the building committee before the project, which I thought was kind of putting the cart before the horse. And I think I said those exact words at the time. But you said, no, we're doing it differently this time. This is how it has to happen. And so I guess I also asked, why aren't, I mean, it seems to me like we should kind of know what we're doing before we have a building committee. And I was told, well, we don't know what we're doing. We don't have the reports back yet. We're still waiting for the reports. And then we'll determine what, whether we're going to renovate or build new or what the scope of the project would be. It seems to me like this has kind of already been pretty well vetted and pretty known, that the plan has been to do a new build. And I just feel it's a little disingenuous that we're being presented with only the one option now, and that we didn't have any opportunity to discuss with any thoughtfulness, any thoughtful consideration of the different options here.
Just as a reminder, I'm sorry, Representative Shea, just as a reminder, that's actually not within the purview of our body to.
Well, that I don't mean to interrupt, but other folks have asked questions. In fact, folks that have objected to me asking questions have asked questions. So they've called point of order and said I'm not able to ask questions, but then they got the mic and asked questions. So
I apologize. I want you to have every opportunity to ask your questions. I just wanted to offer a reminder that it would not be normally within the purview of the RTM to be the one choosing the option, that would be happening prior to it coming to us. And I apologize if you did not have an opportunity to ask your questions. I want you to be able to do so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. My biggest concern, as I think I've already stated, is I represent my constituents, and I'm trying to do the best job I can by making sure that we are fiscally prudent with our tax dollars. And I just don't feel as though we've been given enough opportunity to weigh the options and evaluate whether or not this makes the most sense. And I appreciate the Board of Ed. I know that their charge is to do what's best for the town and the students, and I believe they're doing a great job. But I just feel like if it's a requirement for the RTM to approve this, which apparently it is because you're here, then I think we should be given the opportunity to know what we're approving. And I feel as though you've fallen short for providing us with that information. And also the report, which I do have a copy of, I think it was dated revised September 12th. So that's the most recent report that I've seen.
That's correct. And that came after their presentation at the Board of Ed. And based on some Board of Ed feedback, they went back and did some additional checking on things that we had, our members had raised. And that's where the revised report came from.
And it doesn't indicate anywhere in here what revisions were made. I wonder what the substance of those revisions is. There's no like flags or clouds or anything.
It was largely soft costs. There were some other changes made, some technical corrections made to the report. We did get a change log at some point, but it was not. And I know this was a topic that was also brought up at the Board of Finance meeting down at the Fire Training Center. But it was the difference in the Dwight numbers was largely upping the soft costs and based on feedback from the Board of Ed.
I just want to make one comment about the building committee. It is true that we did that first. I think we talked about, which comes first. But regardless of, if you just chose a renovation and no ECC, you would still need a building committee. So
Yeah,
it was,
totally.
so it wasn't that we chose, like, we knew I think that, and based on this conversation, everybody appreciates then that there's a need at Dwight for something. And we wanted to get a head start with just getting the charge out there, getting the building committee. It took time to recruit for that, getting the approval through all the town boards. You guys did that at your last regular meeting. They haven't met yet. They're going to be meeting Wednesday, but it's not like they've gotten to work just to have everything lined up, that if this project is approved, that the school district would be ready and have all the pieces that they need to go to the state. That's why we just started early, and it was out of order, as we stated at the last meeting.
And I believe that the folks that you've selected to sit on this committee are they're excellent. So I'm speaking for myself, very happy to vote to approve them. They seem very qualified. In the 1F proposal, which is the one that you guys are recommending we vote to approve, it mentions the fact that there's a concern about the very steep access for the ECC building, and the driveway is the road is going to be very steep. And I looked at the drawings and I concluded that they were correct. It is very steep. There's about a 40-foot cut between like kind of where the tennis courts are and getting up to the top of that hill. There'll be some very large retaining walls required. And I would imagine it's going to be difficult to get up and down that hill with inclement weather. So that's a concern of mine too. It is noted in the report, and I think it should be carefully reviewed. And then maybe you could tell me a little bit about the ECC building has radiant floor heating throughout. Do you know why that's so? Is that a requirement of the state?
You're speaking about from the report, the designs that they have in the report. Again, those are high-level schematic designs. As we get into the design development, that's something that would be evaluated and possibly value engineered out, depending on what the cost is and what the other options are. I think that part of that was part of when given the charge to Svigalis to come up with a conceptual design, was doing a green evaluation as well, energy efficient evaluation as well. So they designed something that they felt was the highest energy efficient possible. And again, it's still a schematic design phase.
So there's no state mandate for radiant floor heat in ECC space?
No state mandate, just the only mandates are the temperatures in the classrooms.
Which you wouldn't need radiant heat to control that.
We can use.
And I
forced
also,
hot air,
speaking of
water.
mechanical systems, I noticed that there's an add alternate to do a geothermal system at the Dwight School, which would be like a $3 or $4 million added cost. Is that presently being considered, or is that?
The reason that was in there was because all options were on the table. Again, it goes back to the building committee and the design and value engineering to determine what's the cost, what's the return on investment for something like that versus doing a traditional system.
Spiegel said that they did want to include that as an option in case that was something that we wanted to consider, but that's not incorporated in the $76 million.
Right, it's a separate line item at the bottom.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a little bit over 3 million. Okay.
They
Um,
also said that it had a very long path to return, so.
Yes, I don't know, there may be added federal reimbursement for that. Usually there is for geothermal systems.
Yeah, and I think that that's something the building committee would have to, if it moves forward, would have to look at just the return on investment and other grant opportunities for that. The state does look for building projects to be looking for energy savings and for green initiatives, and that is part of the charge. So you're going to see some language about that, and that will be something that the building committee will need to consider.
Yeah, there's a huge existing photovoltaic solar array on the roof of Dwight. I don't know if that's owned by the town or if that's leased from the utilities, but I wonder what the plan is for that.
So that would have to be evaluated at the time of, well, because we're preparing a new build at this point, that would it would stay active in the current spot until such time as it would be ready for demo of that building. And at that point, we'd have to evaluate it. It's a PPA program, so could it be moved to the new building? Could a newer system or that system with additional space cells be put on there? There's a lot to be evaluated with that system at the right time for the building committee.
Okay, and then before the Dwight School would be demolished, would you be salvaging anything and repurposing it into the new facility, like the smart boards and that sort of things, or do they all just get thrown out?
Oh, no, absolutely. Everything as usable will be removed from the building. Smart boards are going away. It's a new Prometheum boards now that are used in the classrooms. So, but yes, anything that's usable will be reallocated.
Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and I don't mean to sound contentious or anything. It's a very important to me, and again, my kids went to Dwight, and I'm very fond of that school. So, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ludwig-Zach.
Christine Ludwig-Zach, District 8. I would echo what Representative Shea just said. Thank you guys for all your hard work. And I think the three of you are taking maybe like the brunt of some of our frustrations given the information coming a little late or missing. So again, thank you for your hard work. But I do have just a few follow-up questions, a clarification. Representative Barrett had asked before about if we were to, if this didn't move forward or if it didn't get voted on or if, it didn't pass next week. You had referenced maybe like a year delay on that as opposed to a few months. Did I hear that correctly? Like in terms of like when the build would start, like hypothetically, if we pushed the vote back a month, would we be pushing the building approval project back a few months, or would that be a longer duration?
Any delay from the town would cause a state delay in it, and it just caused a chain reaction to push back. We are prepared, as you know, we've mentioned that the building committee is scheduled to have their first meeting on Wednesday, which is an organization meeting. From there, once funding is approved and we go with the application to the state, we're ready to start getting the RFIs ready, or I apologize, RFIs are projects themselves. RFPs out for contract managers, for design engineers. So and part of the reasons we did ask for the Dwight Building Committee to be established is so that we would be able to hit the ground running once everything was finalized, decisions were made with which direction and cost. We want to keep this moving as quickly as we can so that we can meet those deadlines.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the capital planning meeting on September 25th, that was the first time I had heard the $74 million amount associated with the Dwight project. So I think that's still something that I'm digesting and figuring out the information around. So I can appreciate wanting to move forward with it as quickly as possible. But I think that, you know, 3.5 weeks or 3 weeks later is still, it's still pretty fresh. And there's still a lot of information to go through. And then the last question I had at that capital budget meeting, there was allocations for approximately $60 million, maybe because of the grant that we're anticipating that we'll receive at the tail end of the project. So and this might not be directed, or, you know, I'm not sure who would speak to this, but there was $19,806 allocated in 2027, 28, and 29. So that's a pretty significant chunk of funds, you know, $16 million that's still not in the mix. And I think we need to float that, or we need to have that allocated somewhere. I'm very possible I misunderstood this, but that was what it looked like in the paperwork.
For the reimbursement that we're expecting back, we're going to have to cover that cost, being, as Mr. Papa George says, we don't get that reimbursement until after the project's completed. So we will
Right.
have to provide, the town will have to provide that funding.
I think I didn't see it in the, I didn't think I saw it allocated anywhere. That additional,
I don't
to
have the
meet the
cap-
74. Yep, and that's,
I
and
don't
again,
have it
that's, I
with
know
me,
that's
but
not
we did
in
have
this-
a conversation about that, knowing that we would need to float that money in part into the reimbursement.
Yep.
And I think it was calculated into the cash flow for the project. We also did look at, say we got no reimbursement for Dwight. And
Right, I feel, and that's kind of my thought,
And it still kept us
unfortunately.
underneath, I think, the 9%, the bonding cap. So we were still within that.
Okay.
Obviously, we want to keep it low, but we were still, even if the reimbursement didn't play out, we were still within our bonding capacity.
Okay, because I think it is just kind of another, just to reiterate, it's not guaranteed, unfortunately. So it's kind of, we still have to think about it as that 76 million, I think, for you know, from this approval. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. So I completely understand that we're being asked to either approve or not approve the $76 million expenditure on this, but understanding the other options and the advantages and disadvantages of each of those helps inform my decision on whether to approve this expenditure or not. Because if I think there's something that makes more sense, then I'm not going to approve $76 million. So that's why there's a lot of questions about the different options here. Along those lines, it seems to me that really the two viable options were 1D, which was like new renovation with the addition of the ECC, and 1F, which you have come before us on. And I think, Jeff, you had said the reason for 1F was the long-term value, which I totally get. But my question would be, if 1D had been selected, what is the functional life of a like new renovation?
I'll toss this back over to Mr. Papa George, but we were talking in the 20-year range for the mechanicals. What do you want to?
So, yes, as you said, in the 20-year range for mechanicals, other issues, and it also opens up the possibilities of the unknowns, which you would have seen, as we've already mentioned, the moisture, as you know, the library at the current Dwight location is the back wall of the library is a retaining wall for moisture, and so to dig down and figure out what might be causing moisture issues, these are all cans that you might start opening.
But
at that
wouldn't
point.
that be addressed? Again, maybe I don't understand what a like new renovation is, but wouldn't those types of things be addressed during that renovation? And wouldn't something like the mechanicals, wouldn't a completely new structure be subject to the same 20-year useful life on mechanicals?
So with the mechanicals, again, if you're doing a like new renovation, it doesn't always include mechanicals unless it's determined by the engineers that it is needed. And those become very tricky on whether they are reimbursable by the state or not reimbursable by the state. So Spiegel's used the number for the reimbursement that is what the state puts out for what we get for reimbursement, but there is potential for that project to grow. whereas which is a new build is a locked-in number without without, I don't want to say no potential, but very little potential for growth in that type of project.
Isn't there a way to find out in advance what would be subject to reimbursement and what would not be subject to reimbursement?
That is determined during the audit process, and the project is not audited until the project is completed and accepted by the Board of Education, and then that is when it goes into the audit phase of the project.
Well, so,
with the
so
state.
in the Spiegel's report, though, they've got an estimated reimbursement amount. How did they come up with that?
To state, the state puts out a reimbursement rate based on different determinations for every town in the state of Connecticut. So they pull that number off, and that's your that's your baseline reimbursement. And then from there, that you go, at the end of a project, you go through an audit process, and that's where they determine, well, this was reimbursable, this was not eligible. So that's their baseline number from the state that they
But
use.
wouldn't Spiegel's put that into their estimates?
Spiegel's would
Spiegel's,
use,
I'm sorry.
they use the baseline number from the state for their estimate.
So are the numbers that they've put forward then pretty reliable? I mean, again, I'm asking this because there's a $16 million difference here, right? And I think we all want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible with spending the town's money, and that's why I'm trying to understand, what are the value differences here?
I think looking at Holland Hill again was the reimbursement rate on Holland Hill was 26%. And at the end of the day, after the evaluation of the project, the reimbursement to the town was 18% because there was ineligibles discovered throughout the project, whereas a new build, it's 100% eligible for reimbursement. So there's no unknowns for reimbursement on a project that's a new build like this.
And I think also in comparing the new build to the renovate like new, one cost that's not in there is what to do with the children. Mr. Peterson referenced transportation costs, but unless you keep them in the school, you're going to need to find someplace else to put them. And to my knowledge, the Board of Ed, that has been a challenge. We don't have school space for them right now, so that would just add to the price tag. If we were able to keep them in the building while the renovation was going on, Svigals gave a 20% increase, a 20% increase per year. And a year, a 20% increase in the project cost for the renovate like new, and add another year to the project. So it would drag out. There's the unforeseen costs of what do you do with these children and the disruption to families.
Right.
And if you keep them in the building, some of the concerns about renovating that building while there's children in the building, tearing apart walls, not really ideal. While there has been, Yale has been there and measures have been put in place with air quality, if you look back, that it's an older building, that there is likely asbestos, maybe PCBs and tiles that is encapsulated, so safe now, but once you start tearing things apart, I think that there would be concern about having people and I would be concerned having people in the building while it's being renovated.
Along those lines then, what are the potential disruptions to kids who are going to be in a building when a new building is being constructed right outside their door?
Going to be less than if they're in the building at the time.
But there's still
There's going to
still
be
issues.
ongoing construction on the site, which is a large 30-acre site.
So hammering and all, that's not going to have an impact.
Well,
Kids looking out windows that see what's going on, that's not going to have an impact, right?
I think, look, I think that is it going to be an interest of kids and families while it's happening? Yeah. Am I willing to, my board feels this issue of family disruption very, very strongly.
Right.
And in what scenario would we want to distribute those kids throughout town? Maybe splitting up families, having one family send their fifth grader to Jennings and another second grader to Mill Hill. Like those were things that we took very, very seriously.
Right.
And obviously no scenario is going to have no impact on the kids.
Right.
This scenario we judged would have the least impact on.
Well, that's what,
negative
right,
impact
and
on
that,
the
but
kids.
that's why
And
I'm asking you these
we were
questions.
spinning out a variety of scenarios on how we could possibly distribute these kids, because there's no like wing of a school building in town that is unoccupied. We were talking about maybe moving some of them down to Oldfield to be in the senior center building, but that building, even if we did that, would require additional work and would be a big slog for people to get down there from their current neighborhood, and may not be able to fit everybody from that school. So then what do you do with the additional kids? We ran through a lot of different options, and a lot of them were unpalatable. Just from a Board of Ed family, child-centric view, we were really uncomfortable with distributing the kids throughout town.
No, understood, but again, that's why I'm asking these questions, because I
Sure.
want to
No,
understand
no,
the rationale that goes into
I completely
why
get
one
it.
option
I
is better
also
than another.
understand that the way that we have viewed it is not necessarily the way that you will view it. And I'm just telling you what our board's
No, and that's
discussion
what
was
I,
about.
and that's what I want to understand, because I just want to be able to justify the cost difference. And you're making some compelling arguments, and I apologize if I'm a little contentious here by throwing out, different options, but
I'm here to answer
this is
whatever
how,
questions you
this is
have.
how I'm going to be informed when I'm asked to vote on this. And by the way, Chris, you're not the most contentious questioner here by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, so anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Representative Carroll. We can't hear you, Representative Carroll.
Michelle keeps messing with it. Right, Michelle McCabe, District, whatever. Chris Carroll District. So maybe you can help me understand this. So we're going to bond out 76 million, some odd, $400,000. We get 15 million back from this state. Where does that go? Does that pay down the debt? Does that go into the general fund? Where does that $15 million, when it comes from the state, go?
Can help pay down the debt service on future projects. Or we can have a conversation, we get that money based on the needs of the town at the time.
No, I would just, my personal feeling is you pay off a portion of the
pay-
76 million specifically, or whatever in the waterfall. Okay, thank you. Let me turn it.
Thank you. Representative Steele.
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. I just want to say, kind of summing this up, thank you, Angeles, Jeff, and Christine, for doing this. This is really important. You probably didn't expect it to kind of go this way, but, and Jeff, you just mentioned your board looks at things a certain way, so do we. I mean, we're a 40-member body, as you know. We're not the Board of Selectmen, we're not the Board of Education, not the Board of Finance. We're 40 people, different schedules, different lives. It's, we can't all listen to a 4-hour Board of Finance meeting. Not everyone can. We can't all read a 150-page report when we can get a hold of it. So when presentations come to us to bond or to approve capital spending, especially of this sum, 75 million, we've all said it's probably the highest we've ever bonded, we expect to be sold on it. We expect that the body, not the body, but those who want this done come in and sell it to us. We are the final deciders. I know you have to take this to the state, but we are not just, you can't just assume, yes, we're rubber stamp. And I said this earlier, and I'm not trying to repeat myself, but because going forward, please know that we all may not be up to speed on everything. You saw through the questions. These were all good questions. I'm sure a lot of people who didn't ask questions might have had the same questions. So that's good that they were asked, and this is part of the dialogue process. And we're not even debating, it's just dialogue and questioning and answering. So I just want to reiterate that, please, in the future, come to us to sell the project. We need to be sold on. We need to know. And we do this through our questions, but come to us with an overview of what the latest is. We haven't all watched that 4-hour Board of Finance meeting, I've said. So please come to us and say, this is what we're doing. We want this done. This is why. As we didn't have the 14-point presentation we talked about. So this was a little different. Creating the building committee was a little different. This process is a little different. We've kind of cart before the horse a little bit. So that's all. I just think you've seen the need for us to have that information ahead of time so we can think, and maybe we would have cut out half these questions.
No,
I'm
and look,
done.
I want to,
thank you.
I want to reiterate, I'm happy to answer whatever questions members have, and that's what we're here to do. It is different because in addition to the 14 points, which we did present to you guys. We understand this other report has been out there. Totally get that. So again, I'm here now. I will be here next week. In the intervening time, any questions, I'm happy to try to make some time to answer them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The only question would be, A, can you send us the report? Please. And secondly, I think it's important if Svagals were at our meeting next Monday. Because even if they weren't at the other committees, clearly there are a lot of questions here, and I think that would be an important final step to approve the highest spend this town's ever approved, other than our annual budget.
Pressing. For those of you who have read the report, if you have any questions for Svagals, just forward them and we can get them to Svagals and try to get the answers before, we will try to get them here on Monday.
I will say the Board of Ed did get a lot of questions to them in advance, and that streamlined their presentation to us immensely. So.
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, if they could give us a presentation, however concise they can make it, that would be very useful. And then we could follow up with questions, since we didn't get that opportunity.
Thank you. Representative Blanchard.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Rob Blanchard, District 6. Representative Steele essentially just said it, but, and thank you guys again for being here tonight. I'm sure we all didn't expect this to be a couple-hour-long agenda item. But in addition to the report, can we just have everything that the Board of Finance and the Board of Education had to make their decisions? I know the Board of Education made, their charge is different than ours. It was to determine the best option for the students in the school, and ours is a little more on the financial end. And I know that we're supposed to trust that the due diligence was done by the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed, and I'm sure that it was, but I do share the frustration that we didn't get all the materials in order to have the questions here, and it's essentially an up or down vote on this allocation. So to ensure that it's a level playing field and we have all the same resources and information, can we please just, on the record, request all those same materials as the next additional resource for the next meeting?
I guess I'm not sure what Board of Ed materials you might be looking for. I mean, the report obviously I get. I mean, and we can include the minutes of our voting meeting if that's of any help. But again, it was a public meeting, and I understand that not everyone has time. I go to a lot of meetings. I know what a time suck these things can be. But if there's something specific that you're looking for, please let us know.
I think the Svagals report is the big one.
Sure.
Thank you. Before,
Yes, there is a document from Svigals answering Board of Ed questions
that would be
we can
helpful.
probably forward as well. That may, yeah, it's fine.
That would be very helpful. Oh, other questions?
And Anthony Calabrese as well. He could attend next Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, regarding playing fields.
before we, are there any other questions? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Anthony.
Just a clarification on Anthony, just, I'm going, and forgive me, Madam Moderator, that this is a bond request about Dwight. In terms of Anthony, he was not expecting to be here on Monday. I hope he will be available. Is the questions going to be specific to Dwight Fields?
I think we
Oh,
want
hold on, hold
Anthony
on.
because it impacts so many of the field's use. And obviously that would have been discussed in the report that we all have acknowledged we will get by then. But I think some questions for Anthony in his position would be very helpful to have next week.
What would actually be great is if members already know they have questions for Anthony, you can put them in an email to me tonight, tomorrow, get them to me, I can get them to Anthony, we can get those answered. And obviously, if there's still things left unanswered, we can see if he is available to attend next week.
I don't know the question.
Yeah, that would be helpful, just because fields is a big conversation
Yeah.
and that's like global for the town. Not necessarily the Dwight Fields are one thing, but where we're going to put fields and what type of fields townwide is another discussion that really is not part of this bonding resolution.
Before we move on to our final items, is there any other questions regarding this item? And again, I would reiterate, because I do want to make sure members, oh, sorry, Representative Shea.
Just because we were just talking about Fields and Anthony, shouldn't the cost to replace the fields that are being lost because of the new build be incorporated into the cost of that project?
I would just say I would be hesitant because these are conceptual designs that we don't know what the final architectural designs are going to be. And I think the building committee and looking to finalize the project, restoring and keeping fields or creating fields in new areas on the site would be a priority based on feedback from all boards.
I'm just concerned that it's a capital expenditure, and it would be because of this project, and perhaps it would be more appropriately allocated to this project than to, something down the road.
Point taken. I think again, that's is part of a larger conversation about what type of field, where it belongs, what the cost of this project actually end up being. I think it was mentioned that they could be less. We talked about soft costs. That is, it moves forward, that there might be money already built into the project to cover field work. These fields are, the soccer field is it's just really an open field. As we said, the track is not a turf track. There's not a turf field up there. I don't know what the cost would be of putting a new field in, but we can definitely have Mr. Calabrese here to answer some of those questions of replacing what's there now someplace else.
And I'm sorry, I didn't identify myself before. Apologies for that. So Chris Shea, District 2, as if you don't already know that. Would it be possible for any members who would like to go to the Dwight facility between now and next week to be able to go take a look?
Absolutely. If you reach out to my office, we can email me, we can make that happen.
That would be great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
All at once, or we're pretty
Thank
flexible.
you. I see online, Representative Longo, you have a question about fields, which
Just Representative Melissa Longo, District 1, just a quick question. I would also appreciate if Anthony could be here because our fields are limited as it is. I'm, some of us who have kids who are playing and, softball, baseball, soccer, tennis, what affects one field ultimately affects the other, whether it's due to closures or, flooding, or what field is underwater, what field is accessible. And it does tend to affect, essentially what's going on around town. So I think if Anthony could be available, I know that if we all have our questions, it was mentioned before, we can email him separately. And it would just be helpful to have his intake and insight as to how this might affect things with the, potential new construction going on with regards to the fields, especially because this is going to take a few years, and how we would navigate that as a town. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to echo what First Selectman Vitale said, which is at this point, everything is conceptual. So I do ask people to please put your questions to Mr. Calabrese through me. I can forward those to him, but the reality is that it may be difficult to answer specific things at this point, only because we are in a very conceptual stage of this project. Before we move on to any other items, last questions about Dwight. Okay. I know that we have lots of keen eyes on this body, so you may have noticed this already on items 8 and 9 on our agenda. Thanks to Karen Wackerman, the town clerk, and I are both already aware that there's a typo, and that in a cutting and pasting situation, the words be and hereby is approved need to be added via amendment to both of those items next week. So we are aware of that, and we will make sure that we remedy that to have the proper language through amendments on the floor next week. Our last presentation. So Mr. Peterson and Mr. Papa George, you don't get to go anywhere. We're going to talk about items 9 through 14. These are security vestibules at McKinley Elementary, Roger Sherman Elementary, Burr Elementary, Stratfield Elementary, and an ECC program at Ward. The backup for the bonding resolution for this begins on page 115 of the backup. The backup for more detail in each of the project begins on page 125. I also want to note for members, in case you get confused, the backup material does also contain information for paving projects at Ludlow Middle School and High School, bathrooms at Woods, and a turf field at Ward. I want to just remind people those items are not currently on our agenda. They are on the BOS agenda later this month and will not be coming to the RTM. And so our presentation and question and answer time for this evening is just limited to not the entire report, but just to the items that we need to vote on next week. So go for it.
So what you have before you is 5 vestibule projects. These are security and safety upgrades at 4 elementary schools and the 1 ward site for the ECC. What this does is brings all but the Jennings and Dwight schools up to our district-wide safety and security entrance vestibule, main entrances to these buildings. We've already done this at many of the buildings throughout the district. This, like I said, gives us to the last couple. We felt that this was a very important step to get all the security up to where it should be for all the buildings. That being said, I'm not by any means sitting here saying that we have 5 buildings that are not safe. They are safe. This just brings us more in line with the district standard for the safety of these buildings. That being said, we've already implemented some other parts of this process out of the operating, which is our visitor management system. For those of you who do or do not go to the buildings on a regular basis, when you arrive at a building, in order to get into the building at this point, you must scan a government issued ID and be identified through an iPad system, which tracks you that you are in the building. And then when you leave the building, you must exit the building and scan back out of the building. This helps us with safety, security of who's getting in the building, and it also, during any potential issues in the building, or for instance, a lockdown, it gives us a report of who is currently in the building, who's visiting. It ties into our student system. So this is just this is the construction part of updating that. What this does is allows us to bring that system out of the weather outside the main door of the building into a secured area inside the building. For this area, for those of you who have been there, Holland Hill, I keep referring to Holland Hill, my kids went there, but it's, you don't get stopped at the main entrance, you get buzzed through the first door, but it puts you into an area where you do your check-in, why you're there, what's going on, and your government ID is issued. As you know, this is a safety and security item, so I am probably sounding very vague, and I apologize for that, but we don't give a lot of detail in public comments or meetings about the specifics of the project itself and the construction involved in it. But I'm happy to answer any vague questions about it, but as much as possible.
Thank you. Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. So hopefully these questions are easy. So the 3.7 million, that's the cost of the entire project for all these schools, correct?
All the schools combined together, yes.
Okay. And then the other resolutions, 10 through 14, are to establish the building committee with respect to these projects, and then to give these respective committees to apply to the state for any grant money that they could get to cover the cost. Is that right?
Correct. The state does consider the safety and security upgrade as a reimbursable project,
Yeah.
which is why we need to follow the process of establishing a building committee. And as you said in the other resolutions, what we are asking is that these projects be assigned to the special project standing building committee, as they are already an established building committee in the town.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Online? Okay. We'll now break off into our respective committees. For those online, please see the bottom of the warning for numbers to call in for your committee meetings. Chairs, please remember to record the meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 10:34 p.m.